Great Tribal Chief. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 126, Horn for Help. Hong Yun, who had just sat down, also stood up abruptly, and her face became extremely solemn. "It's the horn of the clansmen for help," Lilei said with an ugly face after only listening for a few seconds. "Anyone from the tribe is in danger?" Although Shi Xiong didn't understand the meaning of this horn sound, the expressions of Lilei and Hong Yun also made him realize that things were not good. The horn made of wild ox horns is very useful. Whether it is attacking, retreating, or other things, it can be expressed with simple horns. However, each tribe has different application methods for the horn, so Shi Xiong can't understand what the long and three short horn sounds mean. In the former Shaggy Cattle tribe, one long and three short horns represented retreat. But obviously, in the Gaoshu tribe, one long and three short horns represent a call for help. Hong Yun asked anxiously, "Lilei, which team is in danger? Also, what danger is there this season that can put 10 soldiers in danger? Could it be a large wolf pack?" Although it has entered winter now, the warriors of the Gaoshu tribe who have captured the bison have not stopped. And as the catching of bison becomes more and more skilled, the original team of 20 people is now divided into a team of 10, and the previous 3 teams for catching bison are now divided into 6. But the people who can go out to catch the bison are the most elite warriors in the tribe. A team of 10 warriors, holding iron spears, iron knives, and bows and arrows with iron arrows in their hands. Even if they encounter a black bear that has been hungry from hibernation, it can be easily hunted down. If the team of 10 elite fighters can be dangerous in the entire winter wilderness, there are only large packs of wild wolves. The wild wolves in winter are very dangerous, especially the packs of wild wolves are more dangerous. The cold winter makes it difficult for these ferocious carnivores to find their prey, so hungry wild wolves will immediately incarnate into the most dangerous animals on this land. If the wolf pack is large enough, for example, there are more than 30 wild wolves, then the wolf pack will dare to attack the herd of bison. And a team of 10 people had to retreat in front of such a pack of wild wolves. Lilei shook his head. He was the leader of the Gaoshu tribe, and he was once the strongest warrior of the Gaoshu tribe. He was very experienced in this situation. It shouldn't be a pack of wild wolves. The teams we scattered out to catch the bison are not too far apart, in order to prevent one team from being in danger, and other teams can make money for the rescue. But the horn company just now, it sounded several times, and 2 times were not the same horn, so at least 20 people of our tribe now gather together. With so many elite fighters gathered together, they won't be afraid of large wolves, even if it is because there are many wild wolves in the wolf pack, and they can retreat calmly instead of blowing the horn of emergency help. Lilei's face was abnormally solemn. Maybe they have encountered an enemy. Lilei's words suddenly made the memory of the silly head surge. "Chief, are you talking about Shi Xiong?" Shi Xiong asked. "I don't know yet. And it may be Yukai. Since we were driven further south, those guys have not given up. The guys are even more familiar with this area than we are, and they may also sneak attack on our hunting team." "What are you waiting for? Go. Let's go to the rescue right away," Shi Xiong said, grabbing the animal skin clothes, and at the same time putting the bladed mountain knife on his back, and the heavy iron spear with his right hand. "Go out. Guardian, you can't go alone now. If you go on your own, you're looking for death. We need to gather as many soldiers as possible." Lilei drank the stoned bear. At this time, the outside of the house had become noisy, and countless shouts broke the tranquility of the Gaoshu tribe. The stone bear opened the door, and the cold air mixed with some fine snow particles pounced on his face. It was going to snow. There are already dozens of men gathering outside with weapons. Once the tribe's call for help is sounded, people in the tribe, especially those warriors, no matter what they are doing, they need to put aside their work and gather in the first place. Lilei saw the situation outside, clenched his fists vigorously, and drew a low voice, "Go, let's join our soldiers to rescue." When Shi Xiong, Li Lei, and Hong Yun came to the place where the soldiers gathered, more and more people were pouring here, and there were many women with strong bodies and weapons. Shi Xiong saw moma grass and lamb's tail flowers among these women. North American Indian women can hold up half of the sky. This is not a big talk at all. In North American Indian tribes, strong women have always been able to serve as warriors. In the former matriarchal society, women are even more powerful. There were 30 or 40 women with big waists and ran over menacingly. Most of them showed anxious expressions on their faces. Obviously, they were among the warriors who went out to catch the bison today. The man is even a child. The buzzing discussion was very noisy, and Li Lei had to raise his voice and shout, and everyone focused on Li Lei. Beside Li Lei, there was still a majestic guardian, and everyone breathed out clearly. In this era of cold weapons, a powerful warrior with a physique and a brown bear is often the backbone of a tribe, especially on the battlefield. The influence of this powerful warrior is even greater than that of the leader of the tribe. Bigfoot and Jao Niu also ran over with their weapons, and Li Lei asked in a low voice, "Who led the team to catch the bison today?" "It's Wolf Tail. He led the team out to catch the bison in the past 2 days," Bigfoot replied simply. "In addition, there are big spears, tree roots, and eagle feathers who went out with them." "Where did the horn sound come from?" "Whose horn is it?" Li Lei continued to ask. "There are many warriors in the tribe, but not many who can hold horns, except for Kukui. The leader of the team is qualified to take the horn. The wolf tail is the Kukui of tribal warriors, and the big spear, tree roots and eagle feathers are all small captain-level warriors. The sound of the horn in each person's hand is slightly different, and it is difficult for outsiders to distinguish, but as a member of the same race, it is easy to distinguish whose horn is the sound of the horn. It is the horn of the spear and the eagle feather. The direction is from the northeast," Bigfoot replied. Li Lei nodded and shouted loudly, "All the warriors are with me, the women are behind, towards the northeast. Those who have horses will ride along, but those who don't have horses will follow along. Quick action, our brothers are waiting for us to rescue!" Roar, everyone shouted in unison. P.S. I would like to bow to thank the 500 Taiyadun Road for the reward. Chapter 127, Wounded Wolf Tail. Bigfoot brought a horse to Li Lei. This was Li Lei's mount, and Li Lei's weapon was also sent. It is said that Li Lei's injury is not clear. He does not need to follow to rescue this time, but Li Lei, this guy has a lot of problems in this way. But he is indeed a very qualified tribal leader in terms of dealing with the tribe. There are a total of 22 horses in the tribe. If you count the horses brought by Lieutenant Ferguson, there are 23 horses in total. The soldiers who went out to catch the bison took away a total of 6 horses, and the captain of each squad was qualified to ride a horse. There are still 16 horses in the tribe. Li Lei, Ferguson, and Bigfoot horses are all exclusive mounts. If the stone bear had not become the guardian of the Kabul sacrifice, he would not be eligible for horses. However, he is now a guardian, and his prestige in the tribe has even surpassed Li Lei and Hong Yun during this period, so the tribe spontaneously gave him an exclusive mount. Although Jao Niu used to be the leader of the Longhair cattle tribe and a powerful warrior, he is not yet qualified to own a horse. Li Lei raised the bone spear in his hand, yelled loudly, and gently kicked the side of the horse's belly with his feet, and his horse ran towards the northeast. A large group of men and women with weapons in the back yelled and ran after them. Shi Xiong followed Li Lei, slightly behind Li Lei. At this time, Li Lei was the leader of the entire tribe, and Stone Xiong could not overwhelm him. But the team just ran out of the tribe and saw dozens of men and 5 war horses running in panic. It was the warriors who went out to capture the bison today, and the leader was the wolf tail riding a horse. However, the wolf's tail at this time looked very embarrassed, like the warriors behind him, all wounded. The most important thing is that the number of soldiers going out today should be 60 talents, but the number of these soldiers in front of them will not exceed 40. Shi Xiong's gaze fell on the left shoulder of Wolf's Tail hand, and his pupils suddenly shrank. In his previous life, he has watched many gunfight movies and gunfight TV series, but how can he not see that the wound on the left shoulder of Wolf's tail is a gunshot wound? But how can the enemy have a musket? Is it a European colonizer? Sure enough, the wolf ran up to Li Lei with blood on his tail and arms. He rolled over and got off the horse with difficulty, and said hurriedly, "The leader of Li Lei is a Chikasha. There are more than 300 of them. They are all soldiers, and there are many Vasikas inside. Those Vasikas are holding muskets." Hearing this, the clansmen who were originally noisy suddenly became quiet, and Li Lei was also a little at a loss at the news. How powerful is Vasiku's musket? They have all heard of it. In the past, after the Vasiku trading team came to the tribe, the Vasikas would also go out hunting. Most of the people in the tribe have seen 2 or 3 Vasiku holding muskets, and just after a volley of fire, a bison crashed to the ground. That power is much stronger than the bone spear and the bow and arrow in his hand. If anyone's bone spear can be compared to those of Vasiku, I'm afraid it's only the super heavy bone spear in the hands of Master Guardian. Oh no, now it has been replaced with an iron spear. It would be nice to say that the Vasikas only have muskets. After all, the firing speed of the muskets is too slow. As long as their number is small, the tribal warriors can fully charge with the advantage of the number of people, and then kill those Vasikas. But the problem is that those Vasikas with muskets were mingled with the Chikashas, and their number was more than 300, and they were all elite fighters. This number alone was more than the entire group. All the warriors of the Gaoshu tribe have doubled. So many elite Chikasha fighters, plus the muskets of the Vasikas. How can this battle be fought? Shi Xiong got off his horse and cast a wink at Lieutenant Ferguson, then walked up and said to Wolf Tail, "You should deal with the wound first. You are a gunshot wound. If you don't deal with the wound in time, you can bleed to death." Lieutenant Ferguson is very good at treating gunshot wounds. Leave your injuries to him. Wolf Tail glanced at Shi Xiong unexpectedly. Maybe he still felt a little bit of resistance, but the sharp pain from his shoulder made him nod in the end. The other wounded fighters were naturally picked up by the tribe. Lieutenant Ferguson came up with a cowhide bag. He wanted to take off the wolf's tail clothes, but found that the clothes had long been stuck with blood stains. In desperation, he could only cut open the animal skin clothes on the wolf tail's left shoulder with scissors, revealing the wound. It's a penetrating injury. It didn't hurt the bones. You have good luck with the wolf tail. Lieutenant Ferguson's face relaxed a little. Next, I will wash your wound with water. It may be a little painful, so bear with it. Wolf's tail is not very good, but he knows it is good or bad. He knows that Lieutenant Ferguson is doing it for his good, so he nodded. While Lieutenant Ferguson was holding the kettle, Shi Xiong glanced at the wound on the wolf's tail, and then slightly relieved. At this time, the musket bullets used in various countries were still round lead shots. www.wuxiaspa.com. Not the kind of bullets of later generations. If the bullet shape of the later generations, the wound on the wolf's tail could not be like this. After being hit by a bullet from later generations, the wound on the front does not look big, but the bullet will roll after it and enters the human body, causing huge destructive power. If it is a penetrating wound, then the wound in front is not big. It is a little bigger than the caliber of the bullet, but the wound in the back will become bigger than the mouth of the teacup, which is extremely scary. But now all countries use round projectiles. When the projectiles are injected into the human body, they will not roll, so the wound behind the wolf's tail does not look big. Ferguson started to wash the wound on the wolf's tail with the water in the kettle. It must be very painful, but the wolf's tail just twitched the corner of his eyes a few times, and he abruptly endured it. Li Lei just took a look at the clansmen who had fled back with the wolf tail, and asked anxiously, "We are still more than 20 people away. Where are those people?" There was a trace of sadness on Wolf Tail's face, gritted his teeth and said, "The team led by the root of the tree first came into contact with the enemy." "People aboard a boat?" Li Lei asked inexplicably, and then he suddenly realized, "Is it Vasiku's boat?" "Yes, it's Vasiku's boat, the kind of boat that can sail against the current." After a pause, Wolf's Tail continued to quickly narrate, "The root of the tree sees the enemy's strength, knowing that blocking the enemy is also looking for death. So he blew the horn for help, while leading people to retreat to the Buffalo Pass, Yuan. He rushed over with people, and several of our other teams also rushed there. However, the enemy is really too crowded, and they have the help of Vasiku's muskets. We can't resist." Chapter 128, French. The words of the wolf tail made Li Lei, Shi Xiong and Big Feet frown. "There are more than 300 people from the Chicashes and Vasikas, and 4 ships came. If it were the Chicashes alone, we would still be able to stop them by virtue of the location of the pass, but when those of the Vasikas after the musketeers came up, we couldn't resist it anymore." Lieutenant Ferguson asked, "What kind of wing clothes are those Vasikas wearing?" Shi Xiong translated Lieutenant Ferguson's words. Wolf-tail glanced at Lieutenant Ferguson, who was bandaging himself. He twitched the corner of his mouth and said, "It's almost the same style as your clothes, all with a black cocked hat, but the color it's the same blue as the sky." Shi Xiong and Lieutenant Ferguson glanced at each other, and said in unison, "It's from France." The 7 Years' War between Britain and France just ended last year and ended with the French defeat. But although the French lost this war, and also lost India, Canada, and all areas east of the Mississippi River in North America, the French still did not give up. Especially in North America, where the emperor is far away from the sky. Although Canada and French Louisiana, which originally belonged to the French, have been ceded to the United Kingdom, the French colonists living here will still use various means to instigate the native Indian natives. Native Indians went to fight British colonists and North American Indians close to Britain. This time the French and the Chicasses got mixed up. It was obviously the Frenchmen's strategy of borrowing a knife to kill people. The French government was incompetent and lost to the British in the 7 Years' War, but the French colonists as far away as the North American continent did not admit defeat. Especially the French have been operating in French Louisiana for more than half a century. They naturally refused to give up such a vast and rich land to the British. In the 18th century, French Louisiana was an extremely vast area. It was the New France established by the French on the North American continent. In 1682, French explorers La Salle and Cavelier descended from the upper Mississippi River to the lower Mississippi Plain, and they immediately declared a large area including Louisiana as a French possession. To commemorate the French King Louis XIV at the time, this vast area was named Louisiana. This French Louisiana is not the later Louisiana of the southern United States. The later Louisiana of the United States is only a small part of French Louisiana, a very small part. How big is this large area? Generally speaking, it starts from the Appalachian Mountains in the east, the Rocky Mountains in the west, from the Gulf of Mexico in the south, and reaches the Hudson Bay in the north. To be specific, using the maps of the later United States and Canada, French Louisiana in this era includes Louisiana, Missouri, Arkansas, Texas, Iowa, Minnesota, Kansas, and Nebraska in the later United States. The 14 states of Scatter, Colorado, North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, and Oklahoma, as well as Ontario, Quebec, Newfoundland and Labrador, and New Brunswick in Canada. The southern regions of the provinces of Crete, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and Manitoba and Saskatchewan. This large area in the shape of an inverted triangle occupies almost 1/3 of the entire North American continent. Is that big? The most important thing is that the French have been operating on this land for more than half a century. The fortresses and armed fortresses of French colonists can be seen everywhere on this land. You let these people living in French Louisiana, this group of French colonists, just surrendered their homes to their mortal enemies, the British. You really think that our French are not weak chickens? Therefore, even if the governments of Britain and France have signed the Paris Agreement, the agreement signed in the old continent of Europe does not control the French colonists living in North America. Therefore, from the northernmost Canadian region to the southernmost Gulf of Mexico, there are armed forces assembled by French colonists everywhere. As long as the British dare to come and take over these sites, then these French colonists will inevitably resist fiercely. The European colonists who can come to the New World in North America are not good people, and good people will not come to the New World. The group of Europeans who came to the New World said it was better to be called colonists, and what was not to be said was a bunch of abusers, criminals, and bankrupts who couldn't get along in Europe. If you talk to this group of people morally, they will use guns to talk to you about force. Don't expect how loyal this group of people are to the King of France. They were unable to survive because of the misfortune of those French nobles before they crossed the oceans to the New World. In their eyes, the King of France is not even as valuable as the corn in the field. At the beginning, you forced me from Europe to a New World where birds don't and chickens don't lay eggs. Oh, now you have defeated the Old World, and you want me to pay for you. Where can there be such cheap things in this world? Get out. Lazy would never give their homes to those British people. The big deal is just to fight one battle. If you still can't solve it, then fight a few more battles. The rotten aristocratic lords of the Old World are afraid of the British. Those of us French who have a firm foothold in the New World will not bow to the British. www.wuxiaspa.com. The French who broke out under this complex are terrible. They not only fought the British in the vicinity of Canada and the Great Lakes, they also took the initiative to attack in the South, raising butcher knives against the British and the Native American Indians who are close to the British. Like this initiative to draw the Chickasaws living on the east bank of the Mississippi River, and lead the Chickasaws to attack the Cherokees with an inland sailing boat. They live in Oakland in the north, approximately near modern Paducah, planned by French Army Major Chrétien Armand in the fort. Chrétien Armand came to Fort Cochran before the outbreak of the 7 Years' War, and grew from a lieutenant officer to the highest commander of Fort Cochran. He knows that the Chickasaws and Cherokees in the South are very close to each other, but the Chickasaws have a good relationship with him, while the Cherokees have a good relationship with the British. At that time, Major Armand had been sitting in the mountains watching tigers fighting, and at the same time traded cheap goods from the European continent to the surrounding Indian natives at extremely high prices in exchange for large amounts of gold and animal skins. His little life is very moist, and his net worth has soared by in times without knowing it. However, the small days of stability ended completely with the end of the 7 Years' War. France was defeated and the support from the European mainland became less and less. It was definitely not going to work. So Armand turned his gaze to the east. At this time, the Chickasaws took the initiative to come to the door for help. After several days of planning with the staff, Major Armand decided to recruit 4 inland sailing ships passing by the fortress and dispatch 100 soldiers, headed east under the leadership of the Chickasaw. P.S. Bo to thank you for the reward of sailing 888 inches 100. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129, 1. What is Bliut? Stone Bear and Lele. They naturally didn't know what happened in Cochran Fortress, nor Chrétien Armand's plan. They could only judge the current situation based on the words of Wolf's Tale. The Roots and the Eagle Feather saw the enemy's strength, so they let us come back first. They broke them. The branches died under the muskets of Vassiku. The Roots insisted on staying, and the Eagle Feathers wanted to accompany the Roots. The relationship is so good. Wolf Tail's tone was a little low. Like the old Muju family, the Root family is also a big family. The name of this family is also very interesting. The father is the trunk. The root is the eldest son, the branches are the younger son, and the leaves are the eldest daughter. Anyway, the family is competing with the tree. The roots and branches of the tree are outstanding warriors in the tribe. In the past 2 days, it was their brother's turn to go out to catch the bison. Unexpectedly, his brother fell under the gun of the Frenchman, and the brother must stay to avenge him. As for the Eagle Feather, it is a fateful friendship with the root of the tree. The good brother wants to stay to avenge, and the Eagle Feather naturally wants to stay with the good brother, so the two of them brought the brothers in their respective teams to stay to block the enemy. Lele and Big Feet, They felt sad for a while. Since he stayed, the 20-odd people are no match for those Chicashas anyway. Unless each of them is riding a horse, perhaps there is hope of escape. Shi Xiong frowned and asked Wolf Tail, "Where is the place where you and the Chicasha met?" "On the north of the Big Bison Pass, at the northernmost point of the Bison Mountain, not far from Big Bend. When the tree roots met the Chicashas, those Chicashas and Vasichus were disembarking from the boat. The tree roots saw them all, many did not dare to entangle, and retreated while fighting. Later, when our other teams arrived, the team of Eagle Feather was uniting with the team of the Roots to block the Chicashas at the Big Bison Pass with their geographical advantages. We helped to resist. For a while, it could have been resisted, but when the Vasiku musket team came up, we couldn't resist it. Roots begs us to withdraw first. At the very least, we must report the situation of the Chicashas to the tribe so that the tribe can be prepared for defense." Shi Xiong nodded silently. Although Wolftail ran back early with a large group of troops, no one can blame him for doing something wrong. In such a situation where he knows he is hitting a rock with a pebble, it is the most correct choice to preserve the vitality and bring back the information from the front. Not to mention that the wolf's tail was seriously injured. The shot was a little bit off. If it was 10 centimeters down to the right, this shot would be enough to kill the wolf's tail. Bigfoot asked Lele anxiously, "Brother, how should we resist? With our strength, we can't resist so many Chicashas at all, let alone Vasiku's musketeers. We are not opponents!" This is very demoralizing, but no one can fault it. If it is a 300 Chicasha warrior, the Gaoshu tribe is not afraid, and it is a big deal to lose both. At the same time, it can also take the opportunity to light up the smoke and summon the tribesmen of the surrounding tribes to rescue. Although the dozen or so tribes that separated from the Gaoshu tribe are not large, they are also a large force when they are united, and they are definitely not something that a tribe of 300 Chicashas can resist. But the problem is that these Chicashas are entangled with the French, and they also have the musketeers, which is hard to say. Don't think that the Lazi lost to the British in Europe, but if you look down on the French, then you wait for a big defeat. Although the French of this era are not as invincible as the Napoleonic era 50 years later, they are still a military power. With the training level of the French army soldiers, as long as their platoon guns are fired, let alone hundreds of Cherokee soldiers, even if there are thousands of Cherokee soldiers, they will be helpless. The war between the British and the Pointons more than half a century ago allowed many Indians living in the eastern part of the New World to see the power of the musketeers. If it is not for the overwhelming number of people, you should definitely not fight against the Wasikas. Musketeers fight. This is already the consensus of the Indians living in the East. Even though the North American Indians are all masters of bow and arrow use, but the bows and arrows used by the North American Indians in this era are mostly short and medium bows. The famous American hunting bows in later generations are not the native bows used by the North American Indians. The range of this earthy bow and arrow is far from that of the famous English longbow, even 1/3 of the range of the English longbow. And the most important thing is that the arrows used by the North American Indians are made of wood. Yes, it's very light, and the arrowhead is made of stone or bone, and its lethality is average. Shooting with this kind of earthy bow and arrow and musket is an act of seeking death. In fact, if the North American Indians really had an English longbow, they would not have been slaughtered by European colonists like pigs. Cold weapons do not have any advantages in front of hot weapons, especially in medium and large-scale operations. The advantages of hot weapons are more prominent. Bigfoot's remarks are actually very reasonable. No one can refute it. www.wuxiaspot.com. Of course, if Lele does not count the casualties, it may cause some loss to these sneak attackers, but it will definitely not be very big. There is only one fate for the Gaoshu tribe, and that is to be annihilated. But Lele was obviously not an impulsive leader. The words of Bigfoot plunged him into contemplation. There is still a horn from time to time in the distance. The people with roots or eagle feathers are using this way to prove to the tribe that they are still fighting. Retreat. Tree roots and eagle feathers we can't take care of. Cabru sacrifices. These Chicashas and French people are mixed together. It is not something our tribe can deal with. We should save the lives of the remaining tribesmen. Li Lei made such a difficult decision. Of course, whether this decision can be implemented or not must be approved by Hong Yun. Hong Yun is not her mother, the previous Kabul sacrifice, although she is now expensive for Kabul sacrifice, but she is only a 20-year-old young girl. She has never encountered such a thing in her life. So, no surprise, Hong Yun turned to Shi Xiong. Shi Xiong ignored Hong Yun's sight, but squatted down, picked up a dry branch and drew it on the ground. Several east-west lines represent the east-west mountains of Yinyu Ridge, and at the top and bottom, Shi Xiong drew 2 crosses. Of course, further down, Shi Xiong drew another circle. Finally, he connected the 2 crosses to the circle with 2 straight lines. I don't think we need to retreat. If we do it well, maybe a wave can take away these Chicasas and Frenchmen. The surrounding tribe leaders all stared in surprise, and Lieutenant Ferguson looked puzzled. What is the slogan? Chapter 130, High Tree Pass. Shi Xiong is very familiar with Yinyu Ridge, so he knows the location of the main passes in Yinyu Ridge. Is like the Big Bison Pass mentioned by Wolftail just now, which is a major pass in the northernmost mountain range of Bison Ridge. The pass is more than 400 meters long and more than 200 meters wide. It is the most important pass in the north of Yinyu Ridge. These people who fled from the Longhair cattle tribe were led by Bigfoot to cross the Big Bend, and then cross the Bison Ridge through the Big Bison Pass, and then came to the tribe. The cross at the top of the simple map drawn on the ground represents the Big Bison Ridge. At this time, the people with the roots of the tree and the eagle feathers are resisting the combined forces of the Chicasha and the French at that pass. Well, it is also possible that there has been lost. They have retreated to another pass in the second mountain range of Yinyu Ridge. After all, the Big Bison Pass is too spacious, not to mention that the combined force of the Chicasha and the French has only more than 300 people. Even if there are 3,000 people, they can easily pass through the pass. As for the cross on the bottom of the map, it represents the Gaoshu Pass at the southernmost tip of Bison Ridge. This pass, named after the Gaoshu tribe, is the pass closest to the tribe and the southernmost pass in the entire Yinyu Ridge. Usually warriors in the tribe go to the Buffalo Ridge to catch bison or hunt. They will walk this pass. This pass is much smaller than the Big Bison Pass in the north. It is more than 200 meters long and more than 50 meters wide. However, the terrain of the pass is much more sinister. On both sides of the pass, there are mountains of 50 or 60 meters high. It is not impossible to climb over the mountains, but it is very difficult. It is the most convenient to walk through the High Tree Pass. The entire Bison Ridge is several kilometers wide from north to south. If you want to get from the Big Bison Pass to the Gaoshu Pass, you need to detour several passes in the middle, and the distance is 7 or 8 kilometers. The Gaoshu tribe is only about 4 kilometers away from the Gaoshu Pass, so if you set out now, you will definitely be able to reach the Gaoshu Pass before the enemy. Shi Xiong came to this conclusion with only a slight calculation, so he stood up altogether and murmured again to Lei and Hong Yun, "Do you trust me? If you trust me, I promise to let all the enemies die on Bison Ridge." Lei hesitated for a moment and said nothing. Hong Yun said seriously, "Dragon Bear, you know that I have always trusted you unconditionally. However, now it is a matter of the life and death of the entire tribe. You must come up with a plan that convinces us. You can come, otherwise you have nothing to say." "Although I trust you, I cannot support you." Hong Yun's words made Shi Xiong nodded with satisfaction. In contrast, the leader of the tribe, Lei, seemed to be unable to take charge at this critical time. Hong Yun is also growing rapidly. Shi Xiong smiled slightly and said, "Okay, since Kabu said so for the sacrifice to you, then you all listen to my plan and see how my plan is." "Well, my plan is actually very simple, but the simpler the plan, the more effective. You see, we can deploy our forces here at Gaoshu Pass and wait for the enemy to appear. But our people alone cannot stop the enemy, so we need helpers. Well, look, if we are so, time is still quite ample. Under this circumstance, it is obviously impossible for them to rescue the eagle feathers, But if they want to keep all the enemies in the high tree pass, then there is enough time. That's why Shi Xiong told Hong Yun and the others about his plan. Hong Yun's eyes became brighter as he listened, and it was obvious that Shi Xiong's plan completely moved her. While Li Lei and Dejiao had an unbelievable look on their faces. They never thought that this battle could still be fought like this. The final result is that Shi Xiong's plan has been unanimously approved by the tribe's senior management. After getting the consent of the tribe's senior management, Shi Xiong turned around and started making arrangements. The warriors in the tribe have arrangements, and the women in the tribe also have arrangements, and even some teenage children have arrangements. At this time, the sound of the horn that could have been heard intermittently was completely inaudible, and an atmosphere of grief always enveloped all the people of the tribe. The people of the tribe have grief on their faces, and meticulously follow the arrangements of the guardian to make preparations. The first ones to set off were the soldiers. The remaining 100 warriors in the tribe were fully armed and ran towards the high tree pass. Wolf Tail and some wounded fighters all asked to follow along, but Shi Xiong refused. These fighters are all good, including Wolf Tail. Today, at this moment, they are all good. But, such a good fighter can't just lose so meaninglessly on the battlefield. They still have injuries. Today's Gaoshu Pass is not their battlefield. More than a dozen wounded warriors have no choice but to return to the tribe obediently to recover from their injuries. Then, the women and children were also dispatched. They were going to follow behind the fighters. www.wuxiaspot.com. Li Lei and Hong Yun rode horses and followed the women behind them. While Shi Xiong did not ride a horse, he gave up his mount to the wounded, throw off his big foot and walk quickly on the road. Of course, at the same time as the action, the Great Smoky Mountainside to the south of the tribe also lit up with wolf smoke. The work was still done by the lynx. After lighting up the smoke, he would ride straight to the high tree pass. More and more people from the Gaoshu tribe gathered at the Gaoshu Pass. This narrow and steep pass is the only pass nearby that can lead directly to the Gaoshu tribe. If the enemy doesn't want to make more detours, then they will definitely take this pass. The most important thing is that some of the roads that have been stepped on in the Bison Ridge will eventually converge to the Gaoshu Pass. Even if the enemy is not familiar with the terrain of Bison Ridge, as long as they follow the road, they will inevitably come to Gaoshu Pass. Not long after the clansmen of the Gaoshu tribe gathered at the northern end of the Gaoshu Pass, 2 war horses ran out from the Gaoshu Pass, and the war horse carried 3 shaky tribesmen. It was Eagle Feather and 2 other fighters. All of them were seriously injured. Several warriors in the tribe ran out and took the 3 of them off the backs of 2 war horses. After seeing the tall stone bear, Eagle Feather fell into a coma after just saying a word. They came, not far behind me. Not long after, more than a dozen children pulled the sledge to pick up the 3 soldiers. A noisy voice came from the Gaoshu Pass. Then it didn't take long for a large group of ebony Chikashes to appear in the high tree pass, and behind these Chikashes were French soldiers lined up with muskets. The 2 sides just looked at each other across the pass. Chapter 131, Chikashi Translator and Major Armand. Chrétien Armand, who led the musketeers standing behind. Even if he lived on this continent for nearly 10 years, he boasted that he knew the natives of this continent very well. But he saw the crowds on the opposite side. When he was a native, he was still a little confused. Don't these guys know how powerful muskets are? Don't these guys know that they are far fewer than their opponents? Aboriginals are natives. They do not live or die. Major Armand spat in disdain, then looked up at the hills on both sides of the pass. Major Armand, are we rushing? The number of Cherokee fighters on the opposite side is much less than us. They even pulled women here. My leader thinks this is the strength of the Cherokee. My leader thinks that we only need 1 charge to completely disperse the Cherokee team. A strange French pronunciation sounded, and Armand rode down on the horse and looked down and found that it was Che, the liaison officer of the Casa, or an interpreter to be more precise. Armand glanced up at the 2 hills again, and found that there was no news yet. He looked down at the very slurred translator and said, "Tell your leader, if he is willing to charge, Then you will charge. Okay, I need to get the exact information before I enter this pass. I will not let our fighters venture into this pass before I am sure that the Cherokees have not set up ambushes on the hills on both sides. Armin's voice had no emotion at all, it was very cold, which made the translator a little embarrassed, and he could only walk to the position where the leader stood sullenly. Of course, he also secretly spit, and cursed secretly in his heart. These French white dogs. Seeing the translator walking away, Armin sneered disdainfully. The natives are natives, and they don't understand any tactical knowledge. How dangerous is the pass in front of you? This can be seen at a glance. If the Cherokee were on both sides of the pass, an ambush is set up on the hill in the mountains. Once we venture into the pass and the Cherokee ambush on the hill launches a surprise attack, we will be in a very unfavorable environment. Hey, I want to charge, you natives are want to die. As a major of the French Imperial Army with very high military literacy, Armin saw the danger of this pass at a glance. If Armin is familiar with the road here, then he would never take such a dangerous pass. But that group of native guides just brought everyone to this pass. Armin, who had a keen sense of danger, immediately stopped the advancement of the team subconsciously, and sent 4 soldiers to climb the hills on both sides of the pass. The task of these 4 soldiers was to figure out whether there were any on the 2 hills. No Cherokee ambush. Armin will never put his soldiers in dangerous areas. Whenever possible, Armin, as the highest military commander of these soldiers, will adopt the most stable route and method of marching. The pass in front of him felt very bad for Armin. This narrow and dangerous pass was like a king cobra with its mouth wide open. And his brothers seemed to be the king of spectacles. The rat that the snake stares. This time I came out with 100 soldiers. Because I came out by boat, the brothers didn't have many horses to ride. In the wilderness of the New World, if there are not enough horses, it is a very dangerous thing. This kind of danger not only comes from the local indigenous people, but also comes from various carnivores in the wilderness, such as a large group of wild wolves. The brothers under his team all have superb equestrian skills. If they can bring out the horses in the fortress, then Armin has the confidence to carry the 100 musketeers across the wilderness. Even if the enemy is strong, he can rely on the speed of the horses and the power of the musket retreated safely. But, except for a few officers who own horses, most of his brothers did not bring out their beloved war horses. Musketeers without horses are short-legged musketeers. So, the more you do this, the more you have to pay attention to avoiding some dangerous environments, such as this dangerous pass in front of you. PL. The 2 gunshots from the hill on the left brought Armin's thoughts back. Hearing these 2 gunshots at the correct time interval, Armin, a smile appeared on his face. It seems that at least there is no Cherokee ambush on the top of the hill to the left of this pass. Waited for a while, and there were 2 gunshots on the hill on the right, at intervals consistent with the prearranged time, and Armin was completely relieved now. As long as there are no enemy ambushes on the hills on both sides of this pass, Armin will have the confidence to deal with any enemy. Although the number of 100 musketeers is small, these soldiers are veterans of more than 2 years. Their platoon guns are called fast and dense. When shooting in stages, even if there are only 20 soldiers in each row, as long as they rotate smoothly, even if there are 1,000 natives on the opposite side, Armin is confident to kill the enemy. I really don't know how the soldiers trained in the Empire, and they were defeated by the British guys. If our brothers fight the British guys on the mainland, we promise to fight the British guys. The strange thing is www.wuxiaspit.com. At this moment, Armin's thoughts drifted across the ocean thousands of miles away. The silly translator ran over again and asked, "Respected Major Armin, can we go through this pass and kill the Cherokees?" Major Armin glanced at this strange-looking translation with disdain. Not only was the translation strange, but the French pronunciation made Armin feel unbearable. As the best language in the world, Major Armin can hardly bear that someone speaks his mother tongue in this way. But it was unbearable. Armin still knew the situation before him, so he nodded slightly and said, "Tell your leader, Let your people not rush through the pass at once. I need your people to protect my musketeers. If your leader is willing to let his men and the gang cut. If the Rockies are desperate, I don't mind watching the excitement behind. If your leader likes to watch my brother slaughter the cowardly Cherokees, then let him guard the right and left wings of the musketeers honestly." The translator smiled and nodded, and then ran back in a hurry. After a while, Armand heard a series of loud shouts from the group of natives. It was obviously the leader of the Chickasaw who was talking to him. What did the people say? Then, Armand saw that these primitive and backward natives had not swarmed like in the morning. Instead, they were divided into 2 rows and stood on both sides of the pass, and there was a 30-meter wide beam in the middle. Some distance. Seeing this group of indigenous people on the road, Major Armand showed a smile on his face, turned his head and said loudly to the brothers behind him, "Get your weapons ready, let's harvest the lives of those indigenous people." Chapter 132, Disadvantages of Saint Etienne and No. 039:S rifle. This group of Chickasaw natives unexpectedly lined up very rarely, which made Major Armand very gratified. It seemed that the native leader was not a fool. He also understood that in order to wipe out the enemy, he had to rely on the great French Empire, musketeers. The Stone Bear was also taken aback by this scene. When did the North American Indians learn to line up? However, after a daze, Shi Xiong finally smiled happily. Seeing that the neatly lined up of more than 300 enemies walked through 1/3 of the pass, the Stone Bear knew that the invaders could not escape. So he waved his big hand, and the clansmen holding weapons in the front row immediately dispersed to both sides. After the soldiers in the current platoon dispersed, the soldiers who had been standing in the second row immediately erected what was originally on the ground. Suddenly, in front of the clansmen of the Gaoshu tribe, there appeared a 2-meter-high, 30-meter-long branch wall. That's right, at the very least, it seemed to Major Armand that there was a wall woven of branches in front of the Cherokee outside the pass. This sudden change made Major Armand suddenly feel a faint sense of anxiety, and this anxiety is not the same as the one that was caused when he saw the pass just now. When I saw this narrow and steep pass just now, Major Armand really had a kind of anxiety in his heart, but that kind of anxiety came more from whether he was ambushing on the hills on both sides of the pass. After all, such a narrow and steep pass, once there is an ambush by the enemy on the hills on both sides, entering into the pass is a kind of death-hunting behavior. But when his brothers figured out that there was no ambush on the hills on both sides of the pass, the anxiety completely disappeared. Under the understanding of the group of musketeers under his opponent, Armand believed very much in the ability of his group of brothers to tackle tough problems face to face. Especially after seeing that the Cherokee natives on the opposite side were still waiting for their attack in such a dense array, Major Armand even had a joy of blossoming. Aboriginals are aboriginals. Before they have personally experienced the power of platoon guns, they are a group of wild oxen who live and die. It is estimated that after these indigenous people see and experience the power of the platoon guns, they will be scared and cry everywhere. But, with the appearance of the wall of branches that looked extremely crude, Major Armand's heart was hummed for no reason. He immediately raised his hand to signal the team to stop advancing, then took out the monocular telescope, and began to look carefully at the wall of branches erected by the natives on the opposite side. But no matter how you look at it, it is a simple wall of branches. This branch wall is woven with branches of different thicknesses. At first glance, it seems very thick, but under the telescope, this branch wall becomes nothing. The gap between each branch can even fit an adult's fist. Although thick and dense branch shields or branch walls can indeed block some of the lead bullets fired by the musket, that kind of branch shields or branch walls are not only woven very densely, but also very thick, as far as 70 or 80 meters. The lead bullets fired by the external muskets are really difficult to penetrate this dense braid of branches. If the Cherokee natives in front of them also came up with that kind of dense and thick branch wall, Major Armand might change the way of attacking, but the branch wall in front of him would be a joke. Maybe some of the branches can block a small amount of lead bullets, but most of the lead bullets will pass through the gaps between the branches and hit the enemy. Aren't these indigenous people come here to make fun, or to act? Don't they know that the clumsy branch wall in their hands can't withstand lead bullets at all? Armin put down his binoculars and looked at the 100 meters away. The Cherokee natives outside sneered contemptuously, then waved a big hand, and the team that had just stopped advancing again. Although he despises these primitive and backward natives in his heart, Major Armin still knows the weakness of his own musketeers, that is, range and accuracy. The muskets that these brothers took were the famous Saint Etienne muskets. This Army standard musket, which was born out of the Saint Etienne marine type and fired muskets, was finalized in 1717. Now the French army also only uses this standard rifle. Although the Saint Etienne rifle is ahead of the standard rifle used by the British in all aspects, that is, the Brown B's rifle, the range and accuracy of this rifle are not satisfactory. As a major officer who attaches great importance to muskets, Major Armin did a lot of experiments with his muskets when he was in the Aachen fortress. The rate of fire of this type of musket before firing is still very impressive. Generally, it can reach 3 to 4 rounds in a minute, and some veterans can shoot 5 rounds in a minute under extreme conditions. So in terms of rate of fire, the Saint Etienne musket is better than the British Brown Beth rifle. But in terms of range and accuracy, these two rifles are almost the same. Armin clearly remembered the scene where he led the musketeers to experiment in the fortress. The target is a 10-foot high and 6-foot wide target that can hit 60 rounds at a distance of 100 steps, about 76 meters, 40 rounds at 200 steps, and only 25 rounds at 300 steps. In the distance between 90 meters and 270 meters, the shooting rate of the Saint Etienne rifle by reading www.hokenshu.com is only 53% to 15%, and this data reflects only as of the probability of damage to a target traveling in a dense formation when the formation is intensive. Shooting is not the hit rate that a single musketeer can achieve. Although the theoretical effective range of the Saint Etienne rifle is 300 steps, approximately 228 meters, Major Armin knows very well that shooting at this distance is actually a waste of ammunition. Only when extremely careful aiming and shooting, 3 out of every 4 shots of a Saint Etienne rifle can hit a target that is 150 yards, approximately 137 meters, in height and twice the width of the human body. Of course, beyond nothing can be hit at this distance. At 250 yards, even if the height and width of the target doubled, 4 times that of the human body, none of the 10 shots hit. When the Saint Etienne rifle shoots a single shot, as long as the distance exceeds 30 meters, the true hit rate is only 1/7. Even with 100 Saint Etienne rifles and large-scale firepower coverage, even at a distance of 300 yards, there is still a certain amount of lethality, but the average hit rate of several volleys is only a pitiful less than 5%. It can be said that it has completely failed. And this 5% hit rate is not the result of someone deliberately aiming at a certain target and shooting, because at this distance, the soldiers have no idea where the bullet they fired will fly to after flying 300 yards. The so-called hit is actually just luck, the result of large-scale firepower coverage. Therefore, Major Armin knows very well that the Saint Etienne rifle can only achieve a more precise strike when it is within 100 yards, about 91.5 meters, of the enemy. And now, the musketeer team under his own is far from the enemy 100 yards away, so the musketeer team needs to move on. Chapter 133, The Ambition of the Whistle Snake. Whistle Snake is the leader of the second largest tribe of the Chickasaw tribe, Ritiki. Redditch is the name of the Chickasaw for a large carnivore that lives in the Big Bend, which is the Tennessee River. This large carnivore can grow to a length of 5 or 6 meters. They have gray-black skin and long tails. The most powerful is the big mouth with sharp teeth. Ritich usually hides in the water. Only when the sun is the strongest will they climb ashore and lazily bask on the shore. The sunbathing Ritich looks harmless to humans and animals. But if you really think so and approach them, then you will regret it for life. Because when you get close to those demons, you are dead. Redditch is the most aggressive devil in the Big River. When its big mouth opens, It can easily snap off the strongest warrior of a tribe, even the red deer or even the bison drinking by the river. At the time, he couldn't escape Reddick's big mouth. Every year, some people in the tribe are swallowed by those demons. Advocating fierce Reddick warriors, long ago took this fiercest demon as the name of his own tribe, and madly worshipped this extremely fierce demon. Of course, if in later generations, this kind of demon called Reddick in Chicash's mouth will have another more resounding name, American alligator, or Me River crocodile. As the second largest tribe of the Chicasha tribe, although the Reddickians also regard the sun as the supreme god, they also believe in the gods of the sky, the gods of the earth and other gods, but they most worship the brutal short kiss crocodile. As for the whistle snake, it is also a very venomous snake commonly found near the Reddick tribe. This kind of snake has wood grain-like markings. There is a string of rings on the tail that looks like a whistle. When encountering an enemy, this kind of snake with venomous venom will swing its tail frantically, and then the string of rings on the tail there will be a loud sound, like a whistle. Does this snake sound familiar? That's right. This venomous snake called the whistle snake by the Chicashas also has a famous name, rattlesnakes, in later generations. This kind of rattlesnake living near the Reddick tribe is called wood-grain rattlesnake. In the later generations of rattlesnakes, it is a very poisonous snake living in the central and eastern United States. When the whistle snake participated in a tribal hunt for the first time, he once grabbed a 3-meter-long super whistle snake with his bare hands. He was not injured at all. This move shocked the entire tribe. The whistle snake is undoubtedly more deadly than the ferocious Littich. After all, Reddick's size was there, and Reddick almost never stayed far away from lakes and swamps, so as long as he paid a little attention, there was no problem avoiding the brutal Reddick. But the whistle snake is different. This kind of more ferocious poisonous snakes are just like ghosts. Their khaki skin makes them difficult to be found. They are even attacked by this kind of poisonous snakes when they are cultivated by the tribe. If the ferocious Littich is a berserker, then the insidious whistle snake is a top assassin hidden in the dark. The brave Littich people would rather face Littich head-on than the whistle snake. So, when the whistle snake caught a whistle snake alone when he was 12 years old, the leader of the Ritiki tribe at that time gave him a resounding clan name, Whistle Snake. Later, the whistle snake relied on brave force and various insidious tricks to successfully become the leader of the Retissi tribe, and led the rapid development of the small-scale Retissi tribe. It only took 10. Over the years, the Reddick tribe has become the second largest tribe of the Chicasha tribe. However, the site of the Reddick tribe is close to the Big Bend. The Tennessee River headed southwest after flowing through Knoxville, and after entering the later state of Alabama, it turned a big bend to the north. From south to north, it crosses the Midwest of Tennessee, and finally enters Paducah where Tennessee and Kentucky meet, which is near the French fortress Akron, and merges into the Ohio River. Therefore, the territory of the Reddick tribe is directly against the line of defense established by the archenemy Cherokee in central Tennessee. Therefore, each year, the Reddick tribe will fight countless times with the Cherokee. If the Reddick tribe has countless battles with the Cherokees every year, and many elite warriors die every year, then the Reddick tribe has become the largest tribe of the Chicasha tribe. However, although the battle killed many fighters in the Reddick tribe, it also tempered the Reddick people. This tribe is not as big as the Chicasha tribe in terms of scale, and is also the tribe where the royal court is located, but in terms of combat effectiveness, the Ritiki tribe is recognized as the most powerful in the entire Chicasha tribe. Of course, many Littich warriors will be killed in the battle every year, but again, this big and small battle is like a sledgehammer that keeps falling, which tempers the Littich people more and more fiercely and fiercely. As a brave and cunning tribal leader, the Reddick tribe is becoming more and more powerful under the control of the whistle snake. www.wuxiaspot.com. And the whistle snake also has its own pursuit, that is, to make the Reddick tribe become Chica. The Shakespeare's first tribe lives up to its name. Because once the Reddick tribe really becomes the first tribe of the Chicasha tribe, then when the old man dies, he will be the most powerful contender for the next chief of the Chicasha tribe. The Whistle Snake has been thinking about becoming the next chief of the Chickasaw tribe for a long time. He has this self-confidence and even this strength, especially when the chief who was dying of old age didn't designate a new successor. The Whistle Snake was even more excited. However, in order for the whole clan to agree to take over as the next chief, it takes a great feat to shock all the clan. After thinking about it, the Whistle Snake thinks that it is the best way to inflict a heavy blow on the Cherokee. Since the Cherokee moved south to Monongahela in the Appalachian Mountains, this powerful enemy has become a deadly enemy of the Chickasaws. Although the Whistle Snake wanted to lead the team to take away the Chickasaws' royal court, he also knew that it could only be thought of in a dream. The mighty Cherokee can't be dealt with by the Redditch tribe, not to mention the Redditch tribe. Even the entire Chickasaw tribe is not an opponent of the Cherokee. So, the Whistle Snake remembered the news that a group of the tribe had received when they sneaked into a small Cherokee tribe on the north shore of Big Bend. That team destroyed the little Cherokee tribe that was good at growing pumpkins, and at the same time brought back an extremely shocking news. It turned out that the famous Cherokee Cabru's sacrifice was not in the Cherokee royal court, but with a group of people living in seclusion at the foot of the Blue Mist, Great Smoky Mountains. The most gratifying thing is that the tribe where Cabru was worshipped seems to have only more than 300 people. Chapter 134, Kill the High Priest Cabru. Even if it is a mortal enemy, the Cherokee Cabru High Priest is famous as the Casa. The reputation of the High Priest of Cabru is not a joke. The title of High Priest, which has been passed down for hundreds of years, is very famous throughout the central and eastern parts of the New World, especially the legendary High Priest Cabru's magical ability to predict the future has made all the Indian tribes coveted. But the Whistle Snake is also very clear that it is obviously impossible for the High Priest Cabru to join the Chickasaw tribe. Then, if you can't get it, just destroy it. If it is possible to kill the High Priest Cabru and at the same time kill all the descendants of the High Priest Cabru, then the trauma to the Cherokee is even more serious than that of the chief who killed them. After all, anyone can be a chief, but the Cabru High Priest who can master the magical prophecy is the only one in this world. If you can really kill the High Priest Cabru and his descendants, then your prestige will definitely rise to the extreme among the race. Therefore, the Whistle Snake chose this plan without hesitation: kill the Cherokee High Priest Cabru. Although the Whistle Snake decided to do this, he also understood that it was not so easy. After all, the location of the Blue Mist is in the heart of the Cherokee. It is not easy to get it without knowing it. For this reason, the Whistle Snake contacted the French in the north and made a lot of expensive promises to the greedy French, and then the greedy Major Armand agreed to send troops to help him. However, these expensive promises were not in vain. At least the war-experienced Major Armand gave an excellent marching route, which is to take a boat upstream along the Big Bend, and eventually reach the distance to Cabo. The location of the Priestley's tribe is very close. It's just that if you want to ride a sailboat that can travel against the current, you can't carry more fighters. The Whistle Snake has been to the Akron Fortress, and he has seen the sailing warships of Vasiku. That kind of boat is very big, and it is said that one boat can carry 70 to 80 people. Anyway, neither the Chickasaw nor the Cherokee can make such a powerful sailing warship. 4 ships. That Major Armand can only give 4 ships. In addition to the 100 musketeers under Major Armand, his tribe can only dispatch 200 soldiers. At first, the Whistle Snake was a little worried that the number of soldiers was too small, but after thinking about it, he felt that what Major Armand said also made sense. We are going to make a sneak attack. We are not fighting the Cherokees in an open manner. Why do we need so many fighters? We only need some elite fighters, plus my musketeers, let alone a tribe of 300 people. Now, even if it is a large tribe with more than 1,000 people, we can destroy that tribe. Yes, we are here this time to attack the tribe of the High Priest Cabru, and we are not fighting head-on. Why do we need so many people? Whistle Snake agreed very happily. However, to be on the safe side, in order to draw the Cherokee's attention away, the Whistle Snake sent all the warriors of the tribe out, and began to harass the Cherokee in various places. At the same time, the Whistle Snake selected the most elite fighters in the tribe and formed a team of 200 people, and then waited for the French sailing warship on the shore of Big Bend, and boarded this huge warship against the current and up. Although the Whistle Snake looked down on those Wassicus, he also had to admit that the sailboats built by Vassicus were really powerful. Not only could it hold a lot of people, but it could also use the sails and wind magically to travel against the current. The Big Bend in winter is very calm and the water volume is much smaller, which made the Whistle Snake very worried at the beginning. After all, this way upstream has to pass through the Cherokee's most tightly defensive line of defense. Once the Cherokee discovers the fleet, they can block the advancement of the fleet by virtue of their number advantage. The large Bend River in winter is more than twice as small as in summer, and the large Cherokee rocket can be easily shot from the shore to the ship. If that happens, it is the most dangerous thing. But I don't know if it was the tribal warrior sent by the Whistle Snake who kept harassing the Cherokee, or that the Rittich they admired had blessed them. Anyway, along the way, they hadn't seen even one of them, Rockies. In this way, 4 sailing ships pulled 300 soldiers and walked against the current along the Big Bend for several days, and finally landed safely on the river bank north of the Blue Fog. Just when I landed just now, I encountered a group of Cherokee hunting, which made the Whistle Snake very nervous for a while. He was afraid that these Cherokees would attract more Cherokees. But the gratifying thing is that these Cherokee people didn't do that. Even if they sounded the horn of rescue, not many people came to rescue them. The most important thing is that these Cherokee people still have a few war horses. What does this mean? This shows that these Cherokee people must have come from a very wealthy tribe. Maybe this tribe is the tribe where the Cabru high priest belongs. Otherwise, how could such a precious war horse appear here? It took a while to destroy these Cherokees, and some Cherokees escaped, but it didn't matter. According to the information obtained before, the Whistle Snake can almost determine that the tribe where the Cabru high priest is located is not far from here. www.wuxiasput.com. As long as you pass through these small hills, then you can directly reach the tribe where the Cabru sacrifices are located. Especially after seeing the woman in costume on the opposite side of this steep and narrow pass, the Whistle Snake almost jumped up in surprise. As the leader of a large tribe, the Whistle Snake naturally understands what the sacrificial clothing that the woman wears represents. Only the high priest of a ethnic group is qualified to wear that kind of clothes and is qualified to wear that kind of headgear. There is no doubt that that woman is the most critical target of this operation. The Cherokee's Cabru high priest. This discovery made the Whistle Snake excited. He sent a liaison officer to contact Major Armand. Although the news sent back by the liaison officer made Whistle Snake a little unsatisfied, the high priest of Cabru was right in front of him. Although the Major Armand is arrogant and rude, as long as he can kill the high priest Cabru, then everything is not a problem. The Whistle Snake, under the command of Major Armand, began to command the soldiers of his tribe to stand on both sides, protect the sides of the musketeers, and then began to advance along the pass. Just watching the costumed Cabru sacrificial approach get closer, even the bows and arrows in the hands of the warriors can get the high priest. But why didn't Major Armand order the shooting? The wall of branches made by the Cherokee simply cannot withstand the volleys of the musketeers. The unknown Whistle Snake wanted to grab Major Armand's neck and ask him why he still didn't do anything. If he didn't care about his soldiers blocking the firing range of the musketeers, he even wanted to order the soldiers of his tribe to make a direct raid. It's just, how come I seem to hear the call of a bison vaguely? Chapter 135, Ignition. The Whistle Snake can see the costumed Cabru sacrifice, as the supreme military commander of Akron Fortress, and Major Kurtyen Armand, who is holding a telescope in his hand, naturally found this extraordinary in the observation just now. Different women. Although there was a sturdy, slightly chilling big man standing beside the well-dressed woman, Armand still aimed his main target at the well-dressed woman. Go forward to a position 90 yards from the enemy, platoon guns, and aim at the dressed-up woman. That is the primary target. Major Armand on the horse shouted loudly. He didn't worry about the group of natives on the opposite side. Understand his words. He speaks French, but how can those natives understand French? Shi Xiong saw the enemy slowly moving forward, and soon passed the center line of the Gaoshu pass, and heard what seemed to be the highest commander, so he turned his head and whispered to Hong Yun, "You will be right now, evacuate, they have made you their primary target." "Really? But we have a lot of people, and there are." "Be obedient, leave now, I don't want you to be hurting anyway." Hong Yun nodded reluctantly. When he mentioned the horse's rein, the horse immediately turned around and trotted away with Hong Yun. Unlike the mighty Sioux people living in the northwest that do not need saddles or stirrups to ride horses, the Cherokees are closer to the 13 colonies and have long been in contact with the Vasicus, so Cherokee horses with saddles and stirrups, it is easier to control and ride. Seeing that the dressed-up woman turned and left on horseback, not only the whistle snake was anxious, but even Armand was also anxious. The speed of the enemy's advance suddenly increased. Obviously, they really wanted to keep Hong Yun's life here. Isn't it? They came here all the way by boat, the main purpose of which was for the high priest of Kabru. Now the main goal is to escape in front of them, and it would be strange if they can bear it. But as they speeded up their advancement, Shi Xiong raised his right hand, spread his 5 fingers and drew 3 circles in midair. Suddenly, there was lively behind the wall of branches, and the voices of children and women were mixed with the moo-moo screaming bison. These sounds made the Chickasaw French allied soldiers who were advancing quickly startled, but the branch wall in front of them blocked their sight, and they couldn't see what was happening behind the branch wall. However, the French musketeers had arrived at their positions, and the first row of soldiers began to squat down, and took the muskets with their backs off, and began to fill them with gunpowder. The Chickasaw once again accelerated the pace of advancement. At this moment, Shi Xiong raised his left hand again, and then separated his hands to the 2 sides. The branch wall that originally blocked the exit of the pass suddenly retreated from the middle to the 2 sides and separated, forming a line about 14.5 meters long and about 14.5 meters wide. More than 20 meters of fence passage. And when the branch walls were separated, all the Chickasaw French allied forces were horrified to find that there was a longer fence passage behind the fence passage, and the 2 fence passages were perfectly connected. A fence passage with a length of tens of meters is formed. And in this long fence passage, there are dozens of fierce bisons standing. Shi Xiong naturally followed and left directly opposite the pass. Seeing the look of horror on the enemy's face, he smiled slightly and shouted, "Ignite!" Several children and women standing beside the first row of bison suddenly raised the torch that had been lit a long time ago, and then brought the torch close to the tail of the bison that was leisurely eating hay. Suddenly, a few thick smoke came from the buffaloes popped up from behind. The bisons who were still standing quietly eating forage suddenly seemed to have been exploded with chrysanthemums, and each made an unquenchable howling. Even those Chickasaw French allied soldiers could get from here. The pain of these bison can be heard in the howling. Then, these enemies were horrified to find that the originally quiet and peaceful bison burst out at an unimaginable speed in an instant, and screamed and rushed forward one by one. And because there are strong tree branches on both sides, these bison can only run forward along the 20-meter wide passage vacated by the tree branches. The tails of the bison in the second row were also lit, and the bison in the second row immediately began to repeat the actions of the bison in the first row. There are about 4 or 5 bisons in the row. The tails of the bison are lit one after another. In addition, the bison in the first row has been running along the fence channel, and the bison with the tail lighted naturally follows. The compatriots in front ran wildly together. As for what is in front, they don't care. The flames on the tail are about to burn to the ass. Whose sister cares who is standing in front? Who dares to stand in the way in front? We all bully horns plus who's to wait on. After Shi Xiong took over as the commander of this defensive battle, the first thing he did was to arrange the children in the tribe to find out all the cloth strips he could find. There were really no cloth strips, so I found out some old clothes and tore them into thin strips. This command made the corners of a group of women's distressed lips twitch. But this is the order of the guardian. These women can't stop their children from harming the precious cotton clothes at home www.wuxiaspot.com. But these women don't have time to feel sorry for those cotton cloths, because the guardian, the adult second order, was to order these women to bring a bison over. There are now almost 70 bison with a bull nose ring in the tribe. However, the bison that was later captured had a short taming time, so Stone Bear only asked the women to bring 50 tamed bison. These bisons took a little longer to tame, but they were quite obedient. While the women and children were doing these tasks, the warriors in the tribe and other tribesmen who had nothing to do were not idle. They were sent by the guardian to use thick branches to weave shields. Each person weaves one shield, which is required to be 1.5 meters wide, 2 meters high. The cloth strips were quickly gathered, and the bison was also brought. But weaving branch shields can't be done so quickly. But it doesn't matter, those thick branches are tied to the bison and weave them as they walk. So, the whole clan was dispatched, and Hong Yun also put on costumes under Shi Xiong's order, and followed the whole clan to the Gaoshu Pass. When the enemy came to the pass, the branches of the shield were almost woven, and they formed a wall of branches when they were connected. With the barrier of this branch wall, the enemy can't see what's going on behind. The group of bear children at the back put those cloth strips into a piece of peanut oil brought by Shi Xiong under the order of Shi Xiong. Peanut oil is not easy to ignite directly, and it can be easily ignited with the help of a fuel medium. These cotton cloths are the fuel medium. This naturally made the corners of the women's distressed lips twitch. The cloth strips soaked in peanut oil were tied to the tail of the cow by the bear kids. And when the enemy completely walked into the pass, the people of the Gaoshu tribe who originally seemed to be blocking the musket with their bodies finally showed their fangs. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136, Fireball Array. Whether it is Major Armand or the Whistle Snake, or the Chickasaw fighters and the French musketeers, who doesn't know how powerful the crazy bison is? Once a wild buffalo runs wildly, let alone people, even if it is a group of wild wolves or bears, they dare not stand in front of the buffalo. Are you really the pair of sharp horns on the top of the bison's head? Are you really a bison? Those 4 bowl-sized hooves are small drumsticks. Do you really think that the buffalo that rushes with that 1 ton of weight at a speed of up to 60 kilometers per hour is blowing in the breeze? Just kidding. There is almost nothing that a wild-haired bison can stop on this continent, let alone in this narrow pass. At this time, there are 50 wild-haired bison running wild at the same time? Don't talk about Chickasaw. The French coalition has only 300 men. Even if there are 1,000 men, they can kneel before the 50-headed wild buffalo. More than 300 people standing in this pass is not too crowded, but if you face a 50-headed bison, the effect will be too horrible. There are steep cliffs on both sides of the Gaoshu Pass, which is extremely difficult to climb, and the length of this pass is more than 200 meters. At this time, the Chickasaw French coalition forces have already passed half of the pass. Even if they turn back and run, how could a man's 2 legs run past a mad bison? Nothing can stop you. You're yearning for freedom. Run, brother. Standing on the side of the pass, the stone bear sang loudly, watching the hooves of the wild bulls throw up the dust in the sky, and then completely swallowed the Chickasaw French coalition forces, and then they could no longer sing. Ha ha laughed. Fireball Array. This legend comes from the attacking method of Qi State General Tian Shan during the Warring States period in China, and it makes its first appearance in the New World of North America. Although the fireball array has also been used by Hannibal Barca, who is known as the father of Western strategy, there is no doubt that the tactics of the fireball array raid is definitely the first time in the New World of North America. In war, even if this is not a war, it can only be regarded as a partial battle at best, but the fireball array still burst out with unparalleled power. 200 Chicash's most elite fighters plus 100 French elite musketeers. This kind of power is not something ordinary people can stop, if there is no fireball formation, let alone the more than 300 people of the Gaoshu tribe. Even a large tribe with more than 1,000 people will be defeated by this force. But it is such a force that is enough to run across the Great Smoky Mountains, in front of the 50-headed bison. It is like paper, being crushed and crushed. How does describe this process? You can imagine it like this: 300 strong fighters squeezed into a 200-meter-long pass, on both sides of which are cliffs that cannot be climbed, and on the opposite side of them, 50 vehicles rushed by with full power, Type 99 main battle tank. That's right, in this long narrow pass, these 50-headed bisons are no different from 50 tanks that drive to extreme speed. They don't need to have tank guns or coaxial machine guns, they only need to lower their heads and run wildly. The effect is no different from directly using tank tracks to crush. The rumble of hooves treading on the ground echoed in the pass, and there were countless abrupt wailings in the middle. After being headed by the bison in the front row, a person might not die for a while, but the huge hooves that came afterwards, it will completely cut off his miserable howl. When the dust in the pass gradually dissipated, the scenes in the pass made many members of the Gaoshu tribe vomit. Even those elite fighters, those who are used to seeing death, at this time, a large part of them can't help but wow and vomit along with them. The women in the back also vomited while carrying their children's neck collar, so that the children appreciated the scene in front of them, and then the children naturally vomited along with it. This is a way for North American Indians to educate their children, allowing them to see death from an early age, which will exercise their will and courage. It's a pity that the scene before me is too miserable. Almost no one can resist this visual impact. Even Leela and Big Feet can't help but vomit. The only people who didn't vomit were the tribes who survived by chance. Tall cows, bobcats, hard bones, fast horses, and wild foxes did not vomit, and even the women did not vomit. They had seen such death scenes as early as the battle when the Longhair cattle tribe was exterminated. In the 200-meter-long Tall Tree Pass, there is basically no problem in the first half, but from the middle all the way back to the end of the pass, the original yellow pass has now become scarlet and scarlet, with a strong smell of blood. Even if it's close to 100 meters away, it's a big nose. A pool of things mixed with blood, minced meat, and broken bones, so that the East Beach and the West Beach cover the second half of the entire pass. Occasionally I can see a dead person with half of his body missing, staring at a pair of horrified eyes, still retaining the expectation of survival. In the second half of the pass, there are almost no corpses in sight, except for minced meat and bones. Even half of the corpse is rare. Almost half of the more than 100 muskets were trampled into several pieces by huge hooves. www.wuxiasput.com. Even the hard barrels were trampled by those crazy bisons. However, as the clansmen of the Gaoshu tribe vomited and cleaned up, they even found 42 complete Saint Etienne rifles. This is a huge gain. Although the gunpowder carried by the French musketeers has long been trampled or soaked in blood to no longer be used, these 42 muskets are definitely a huge surprise. We must know that the mid-18th century was not 100 years later in the 19th century. After 100 years, there were almost all muskets in North American Indian tribes, but in this era, muskets were still tacitly prohibited by those European colonists. Trading items. The North American Indians hardly got rifles in this era. Maybe some powerful tribes have muskets, but that is not a deal, but a slaughter. Before the tribe cleared the pass, the 15 strongest fighters had already ran through the pass on 15 war horses. They were going to search for the enemy who had escaped by chance. It is not Shi Xiong's style of doing things by cutting the grass but not removing the roots. Since the war has started, if you are still alive, where do you put my face? Following these horse-riding warriors, there were some warriors and some women who ran out of the pass. Although the bison was maddened by the flames on the tail, the oil-soaked cloth strips tied to the tail of the ox did not burn much longer. When the flames are extinguished, these bison will naturally recover. These bisons are precious possessions of the tribe. Even stone bears can't bear to let these bisons run away like this. These bison have been domesticated for a while. As long as they calm down, then they can be recovered. Chapter 137, Caught a Major. Shi Xiong did not leave the pass. He has been standing in this hell-like pass, his eyes always looking at the other side of the pass. The tall figure of Lord Guardian made the vomiting tribes feel a lot of peace. Although they were very resistant to this scene, the tribes still used various tools to clean up the pass according to Lord Guardian's instructions. You can't let this pass go on like this anyway. The Gaoshu Pass is the only place for the tribe to pass in and out of the Buffalo Ridge. If it is not cleared out, the pass will be completely abandoned. Even if this pass is cleared out, I am afraid that not many people will walk through this pass in the future, but it is better than just being so bloody, right? The most important thing is that it is winter. The dead bodies of these enemies may not cause disease, but they can definitely attract the hungry wolves with green eyes. The Gaoshu tribe is within easy reach of this pass. If these corpses attract a large number of wild wolves, it will also have a serious impact on the safety of the tribe. Therefore, no matter how uncomfortable, this pass must be cleared. Most of the corpses in the pass can no longer be distinguished from humans, and more are piles of mincemeat and bones. The people who clean the pass can only use shovel to shovel it up little by little, and then transport it to buried on the other side of the pass. The cleaning work continues until the sun sets, and the entire pass is completely cleaned up. However, there were blood stains on the two cliffs on the ground, but they couldn't be cleaned up anyway. These blood stains became the witness of this short and tragic battle. The clansmen who went out to find the remaining enemies all returned, and captured a total of 8 distressed guys, one of which was Major Armand, the fastest runner. This guy was riding a war horse, and he was standing at the back of the line again, so when the bulls on fire rushed into the pass, he subconsciously patted the horse and turned around and ran. Relying on the speed of the horses under the hips, he and a few low-level officers who were also riding horses ran out of the pass by luck. Originally, the 8 of them wanted to return to the inland river. Armed transport ship docked on the shore of Big Bend, and then escaped back to the Okran fortress by boat. However, because of the panic when escaping, they deviated from the way they came and ended up in the huge bison. Ling Zong was lost. Then, they were by a group of warriors of the Gaoshu tribe who swarmed up. In the face of dozens of elite Gaoshu tribe warriors, especially 15 warriors on horsebacks, Major Armand, who had already been scared by the firebull array, and his subordinates, there were almost none, rebelled and surrendered. Caught the French major, which is definitely a huge surprise. As for the Chickasaws who invaded, including their leader Whistle Snake, they had been trampled into sludge when the fire oxen were running together. At that time, the Chickasaws were standing farther forward than the French musketeers, and none of these Chickasaws had horses. They just wanted to run but couldn't run the crazy cows. Therefore, it is not surprising that these Chickasaws, together with their leaders, who were maddened by the madness, are all in one pot. It's just a pity that Whistle Snake can be regarded as a very courageous and capable tribe leader. If he hadn't come to the Gaoshu tribe because of greed, maybe he would stay calm and develop for a few more years. His Rittich tribe could really become Chickasaws' largest tribe. But there is no regret medicine in this world. I guess the Whistle Snake did not expect that the original sneak attack would be completely trampled by a group of crazy bison. Inadvertently wiped out the enemy's leader and the main elite fighters, and also captured 8 French Empire officers by the way. This must be a very happy thing. What made Shi Xiong even more happy was that the people who went out to find the bison also brought back 48 bison. Although the tails of these cows have been burned by half, they may have been tamed for a long time, or they may feel that there is grass to eat with these 2-legged monsters, so when the people find these cows, they hardly resisted, so they obediently followed the people back. As for the remaining 2 bisons, they couldn't be found because the sky was getting dark, but it doesn't matter. Judging from the performance of the 48 bisons, it is estimated that the 2 bisons did not run far. Maybe they are looking for grass in a corner. When it's dawn tomorrow, I will continue to look for it. The probability of finding these 2 cows is more than 80%. Shi Xiong would naturally not focus his energy on the 2 bisons that he didn't find. He still had to take advantage of the night to do something more important. Guardian, these guys are the leaders of the Vassachis. This old guy should be their highest leader. When Shi Xiong came to the French officers, he was responsible for guarding the 8 French prisoners. Spear explained to Shi Xiong. With the help of the burning torch, Shi Xiong can clearly see the appearance of these Frenchmen. www.wuxiaspa.com. The oldest Major Armand also attracted Shi Xiong's attention. At this time, Major Armand has completely recovered from the nightmare at noon. Although he is now a prisoner, he still tries to maintain the arrogance of a major in the French Empire. Even if he has been captured, he is already proud as a rooster at this time. For Armand, maintaining a proud attitude in front of these savage and backward natives is his proper attitude. Looking at Major Armand's high head, Shi Xiong couldn't help but be happy. This guy is also interesting. He was arrested and pretended to be a Gallic rooster. Where is your confidence? Naturally, Shi Xiong would not be used to this guy, so he asked in a deep voice, "Tell me your name, nationality, position and the purpose of your coming here. I hope you don't hide anything, otherwise I don't mind killing you." Come down and vent my anger. Of course, if you answer honestly, I will consider giving you the prisoners the treatment they deserve. Fluent French was spit out from Shi Xiong's mouth, which made several French prisoners seem to have seen a ghost. The stone bear in his previous life was a master in school, especially in terms of language. He is more talented. He can speak English, French, German, and even some Latin. His mentor said at the beginning that Shi Xiong shouldn't choose this major. He should go to a foreign language major. After graduation, he is very likely to find a high-paying translation job. When Major William Hank and Lieutenant Patrick Ferguson brought the team to the High Tree tribe to trade, the 2 of them were taken aback by Stone Bear's fluent English. Now it's the French people's turn. Chapter 138, Invalid Protest. Armand looked at the tall and scary man in front of him in surprise. He could never imagine that in this remote place, there are even natives who can speak such fluent French. Armand was surprised. The 7 men around him also looked like a ghost. "Are you from our French Empire?" Armand suddenly burst out such a sentence, which amused the Stone Bear. "I am not a member of your French Empire. I am a native Cherokee from the New World. Also, don't ask those useless words, and quickly answer my question, otherwise I don't mind making you suffer. Please remember, this is the New World, this is the territory of the Cherokee. Your European rules are useless to us, so I advise you to answer my questions as soon as possible." Shi Xiong held a dark steel pipe in his right hand, and with a smile on his face, he kept smashing the steel pipe into his left palm. That was the one that Lieutenant Ferguson failed in casting the barrel. Shi Xiong felt it was easy, so he was about to come over. "You really are not from our French Empire? Then why do you speak French so fluently?" Armand seemed unwilling to give up and still asked this question. Shi Xiong shook his head slightly. "An answer is not what you asked. You answered wrong, so your subordinates must accept punishment for your mistakes." "As," he said, Shi Xiong swung the steel pipe in his hand down without changing his face. The next moment, accompanied by a clear and audible click and a long and loud scream, one of Armand's side, the ensign's right knee, suddenly showed a strange angle. If it were a normal person, his knees would definitely not bulge backwards, and the ensign's right knee in front of him showed this weird bulging backwards scene. The steel pipe of Ishikama directly smashed the ensign's knee abruptly, and the huge force also made his knee protrude a lot back. Everyone can tell that the right leg of the ensign of the French Empire is completely abolished. Like this kind of comminuted kneecap fracture, there is no good medical treatment even for later generations. In this age, this guy is destined to lie on a leg in the next half of his life. "Ah!" Several French people including Armand yelled out in horror. They really did not expect that this sturdy man who seemed to be very talkative on the surface turned out to be a turnaround, a demon faster than flipping a book. Apart from anything else, Just seeing him break Clement's right leg with a stick that doesn't change his face is enough to prove the devil's indifference and ruthlessness. Shi Xiong didn't care about the panic and anger of the French. The stone bear whose soul came from 250 years later naturally knew how cruel and insidious these French people were in the New World of North America. If the British who came from behind is a lion, then the French are a group of hyenas without any bottom line. In the massacre of North American Indians in later generations, the number of French descendants slaughtered Indians was not less than that of British descendants. The stone bear who received this new body naturally did not have a good impression of the French. The most important thing is that if the Major Silly hadn't heard his warning, they would have to endure Lao Tzu's anger. Don't think you are European white people and dare not start. What Lao Tzu likes most is to kill chickens and monkeys. Sure enough, after the stick was down, the Frenchman who was still holding on suddenly turned into a quail. "You, what are you doing?" I want to protest," Armand asked in horror. Major Armand's words made Shi Xiong look up and ha-ha twice. "Protest? What are you protesting against? This is the New World. This is the territory of the Cherokee. This is not your Europe. So, the protest is invalid." These prisoners were all slumped on the ground. Their hands and feet were tied with ropes, so naturally they couldn't stand up. Ishikama looked at the terrified French major condescendingly. "As for what I want to do, it's very simple. As long as you answer the question I asked just now, you know what I want to do." Armand whizzed, and finally he sighed and said, "My name is Gurdien Armand, a major of the 12th Brigade of the French Empire in the New World. I am now serving as the commander of Akron Fortress. Many things are difficult at the beginning. But as long as you start one, then the next thing is a matter of course." Originally Major Armand wanted to maintain his arrogance and self-esteem, but the strong and scary man in front of him was just an unreasonable stick, and he defeated all of Major Armand's self-esteem and reserve. Lieutenant Clement by his side had already fainted with pain at this time. What a good boy, he turned into a crippled man like this. This stick really frightened Major Armand. I'm reading www.Hukinshu. He doesn't have any reserved mentality anymore. He usually tells everything he knows. After experiencing the horror of the fireball formation, these French soldiers can no longer bear this kind of intimidation. After listening to Major Armand's words, Shi Xiong touched his chin and fell into deep thought. These French people are really bold. They have defeated the European continent and want to win back in the New World. But is this possible? Almost all of your French Empire's territory in the New World has been ceded to the British. Where do you have the confidence to get it back? Unless you can fight alone like those European colonists, you will never be able to win around. It's not that buddies look down on you. Do you French have such courage? Shi Xiong shook his head, and then left these things behind. As far as Shi Xiong is concerned, neither the situation in Europe nor the New World is under his control, so it is too early to consider these things. However, the 4 inland armed transport ships mentioned by the French army major aroused Shi Xiong's interest. "How many remaining soldiers are there on your 4 transport ships?" Shi Xiong asked coldly. Major Armand raised his head, and then he saw the cold killing intent in the eyes of this terrifying man. "If I tell you, will you let us live?" Major Armand asked courageously. "If you can hand over enough ransom or materials and personnel of the same value, I can consider releasing you." This should also be in line with the tradition of your European aristocracy. The eyes of Major Armand and some of his men suddenly lit up. In this case, the desire to survive is more than everything. Chapter 139, Armed Transport Ship. This kind of inland river armed transport ship is a good thing. Although the British have won the 7 Years' War between Britain and France, at this time the strength of the British at sea is still weaker than that of the Spaniards, even compared to the Dutch. The famous Battle of Trafalgar will take 40 years to happen, so now the overlord of the Atlantic Ocean is still the Spanish. But regardless of the British defeated the French Navy is still very powerful, especially in the first half of the 18th century. The French naval guns were quite awesome. At this time, the British had not developed the famous Garon cannons. The famous light and heavy guns were developed by the British Cannon Company in 1778, so at this time, The French guns were even more advanced than the British. If it weren't for the British's training of artillery to the point where it could be called abnormal, which caused the British to fire artillery much faster than the French, it is still unknown whether the British Navy can defeat the French Navy. In any case, although France was defeated, some of the things that the French left in the New World were good things. It's like these 4 inland river armed transport ships, although they can't be compared with sailing warships that can sail in the sea, but on the inland rivers, this armed transport ship is the best. Shi Xiong touched his chin and recalled some comparisons between the British and French naval guns in the 18th century, and after thinking about the great role of these 4 inland armed transport ships, he quickly made a decision, that is these 4 precious inland river armed transport ships. It's just that, although Fort Okran is a military fortress, this fortress is located on the southern bank of the Ohio River, not on the shore of the Mississippi River, and its strategic position is far less important than those military fortresses located on the banks of the Mississippi River. So even if Fort Okran guards the Tennessee and Ohio rivers, there can't be 4 armed transport ships there. After all, Okran Fortress is only a military fortress, not a colonial city. Major Armand, how come your Okran Fortress has 4 inland armed transport ships? With the size of your Okran Fortress, it is already a luxury to equip 1 inland armed transport ship. How can you mobilize 4 at once? What? Shi Xiong asked, hugging his arms. Major Armand looked at the strong man, pursed his lips and said, these 4 ships were originally intended to transport supplies along the Ohio River to several military fortresses upstream. The soldiers driving these 4 ships were not the army. Is a soldier of our French Empire Marine Corps, but my rank is higher than their captain, and I promised these 4 captains and the captain who led the team a great advantage, so they agreed to follow us. That's why, helping guys are also more greedy. As soon as they hear that there is gold here, they just... This kind of organization of the Marine Corps had been produced in some European countries as early as the 15th century and the 16th century. However, it was not called this name at the time. It was called the Naval Landing Force, a service specially established by the major naval powers in Europe for landing operations. For example, the United Kingdom established a naval landing regiment in the 17th century, and countries such as France, Spain, the Netherlands, and Russia also have similar forces. In the 18th century, the name Marine Corps began to spread across countries. Ishikama nodded. Then how many soldiers are left behind on each ship? What are the weapons on the ship? Armand seemed to realize that the demon wanted to attack the 4 inland river armed transport ships, so he shook his head and said, you can't attack those 4 ships. You can't beat those guys. Shi Xiong glared at Armand coldly. If you tell me, just say, I can't tolerate your finger pointing what I want to do. Your people really can't beat those guys. Although there are only 10 Marines on each ship, they have muskets, and each ship is equipped with 6 Valerian shells, even though now those ships are docked, but there are 12 shells on the side facing the river bank. And the ship's side is so high that you can't beat those 4 ships. Hee. You don't have to worry about it if you can't fight. Shi Xiong smiled and threw down such a sentence and turned and left. If it were really the kind of sailing warship sailing in the sea, Stone Bear would never attack. The sailing warships of the 18th century are not something that the Gaoshu tribe can handle. People only need to stop the ship several hundred meters from the coast, and then fire the cannon a few hundred meters away. Not to mention the Haitree tribe. Even if the entire Cherokee tribe is pulled over, there is no way to get that kind of sailing warship. You have many people, but no matter how many people you have, you can't reach other people's boats. Take 10,000 steps, even if your people can get close to other people's sailing warships and small boats, are they fools? Does anyone allow you to pick up the ship? People will leave without lifting the anchor? On the sea www.wuxiaspa.com. If there is no sailing warship of the same level, you will not be able to catch up with others at all, but people can walk you alive like walking a dog. We can't deal with the large sailing warships on the sea, but we can deal with this kind of inland river armed transport ships that have landed and anchored. If this kind of inland river armed transport ship did not anchor at the shore, then the Stone Bear would definitely not touch their tiger ass, because this kind of inland river armed transport ship, even if it is in the middle of the river, the Stone Bear can't get close to people. The most important thing is that the Valerian gun that Major Armand just said is really a big killer against infantry. Valère cannon refers to the various types of artillery used by the French army in the middle and early 18th century, also called the Valerian system artillery. Valère system artillery covers all types of artillery from 84 mm light guns to 155 mm heavy guns. It is the main artillery system of the French army in the 18th century. According to what Armand said, Shi Xiong felt that the guns installed on the 4 armed transport ships were very likely to be the 84 mm light guns. If this type of gun is placed on a sailing warship, it is not very useful, but if it is installed on an inland river armed transport ship, its power can be very impressive. Especially this kind of artillery does not fire solid projectiles but fires grape bullets. That is, when the bullets are used, the lethality of the infantry is really disastrous. Although the range of the bullets is not very far, it is far beyond the range of the Saint-Étienne rifle. If these 4 armed transport ships were in the middle of the river, Shi Xiong would never touch these 4 ships. But they are all docked now. If there is a night attack, it seems that it would not be impossible to take down these 4 ships. Chapter 140, Captain Constantine who wants to make a fortune. In the cold moonlight, 4 large ships of 15 to 6 meters long and 5 to 6 meters wide docked on the banks of the wide Tennessee River. These 4 ships docked at approximately the west of Knoxville, where the winding Tennessee River turned north-south. These 4 ships are docking on the east bank of the river. Not far from here is Bison Ridge, the far north. It was midnight at this time, and the cold night wind made the high-hanging half of the moon in the sky appear colder. Dozens of oil lamps with glass lampshades were hung high in different positions on the 4 ships. Because of the barriers of the lampshades, the flames of the oil lamps were not affected by the night wind, and they were still burning vigorously. But these 4 ships are too big, even if they are connected end to end. The total length is 60 to 70 meters. These oil lamps can only illuminate some key places, and most of the 4 ships are still shrouded in moonlight, dim and difficult to distinguish. There are soldiers of the French Marines on duty on each ship, but in this cold night, even these soldiers on duty can only hold their guns and hide in a sheltered place, relying on the shipboard to block the cold night wind. Brest, Roscoff, Lorient, and Le Palais are the names of these 4 inland armed transport ships. These 4 inland armed transport ships are all named after several small cities in the French Empire to commemorate their hometowns on the other side of the ocean. This kind of boat with a displacement of only tens of tons is not qualified to be named after those big cities or big people, but it still cannot stop French soldiers far away in the New World from naming these 4 boats after their hometowns. This kind of armed transport ship is very useful in the New World. Before the French lost to the British, the entire Mississippi River basin was French territory. Although this was only claimed by them, it is undeniable that it is precisely with this kind of armed transport that French talents can travel on the Mississippi River. The 2 sides of the strait have a firm foothold. The territory of the New World is too large, and the territory occupied by the greedy French in the New World is also too large. In French Louisiana alone, the straight line distance from south to north has exceeded 4,000 kilometers. Such a large territory cannot be controlled by the cavalry, and the Native American Indians in the New World of North America also do not allow Wasatch's cavalry to operate on their territory. Fortunately, there is a big river in the middle of the New World, and there is a Mississippi River that can directly lead from the Great Lakes area to the Gulf of Mexico. Relying on the channel of this great river, the French have completely established a firm foothold in central North America. Although it cannot be compared with the northern Canadian region, dozens of armed fortresses and hundreds of fortresses are enough for the French to control the roaring river steadily. And the means of transportation that connects dozens of military fortresses along the Mississippi River with hundreds of fortresses is this kind of inland river armed transport ship with a displacement of only a few dozen tons. Located in New Orleans near the mouth of the Mississippi River, it is the capital of French Louisiana. This city, built during the Sun King Louis XIV period, soon relied on the Gulf of Mexico and the Mississippi River and became an important city in North America for the French Empire. The military fortresses and fortresses far in the north all use these inland river armed transport ships to continuously send all kinds of materials from New Orleans to the military fortresses and fortresses along the Mississippi River. If the Mississippi River is the main artery of French Louisiana, then these inland armed transport ships floating on the Mississippi River all day are the cells that transport nutrients. These 4 inland river armed transport ships were originally pulling supplies to the upper reaches of the Ohio River to transport supplies to several other military fortresses. As a result, at Fort Auclone, the French Marine Corps who led a team to carry out the task of transportation was Constantine. The captain and the 4 captains were moved by Major Armand. Everyone knows that a lot of wealth is gathered in the tribes of indigenous Indians, from fur to gold and gems. They are all the favorite things of the French. These treasures are the wealth accumulated by a tribe over hundreds of years. If you really follow what Major Armand said, unwittingly take away an indigenous Indian tribe, then each of them can get a lot of money. In addition, the task of transporting supplies was not so urgent, so after discussing with the 4 captains, Captain Constantine decided to spend about 10 days on the ticket. 10 days is nothing for a long-distance transportation, starting from New Orleans, going upstream along the Mississippi River, and then transporting the supplies through the Ohio River to the Albany Fortress. The distance is close to 2,000 kilometers, and the whole journey is upstream again. Even if it goes smoothly, it takes 20 days to run this trip. Time. If it doesn't go well, it's common to run for a month and a half. Therefore, it is quite a bargain to set aside 10 days to make a windfall. So Captain Constantine and the 4 captains who were persuaded www.wuxiaspa.com just took 100 musketeers from Akron Fortress all the way up the Tennessee River, and received 2 more on the way. 100 native Indians went deep into the depths of the Appalachian Mountains. Captain Constantine has no doubt about whether Major Armand can defeat the native Indian. The 200 elite fighters of Native Americans will not be mentioned, just relying on the 100 elite musketeers under Major Armand. Captain Constantine felt that there was no problem with this operation. That's 100 veterans. The one that was fired by the platoon was called a slip. How could an indigenous Indian tribe with only a few hundred people resist the musketeers of Major Armand? Especially when the soldiers of Major Armand landed in the morning, they encountered resistance from dozens of Native American Indians. Standing on the high deck, watching the musketeers repelling the indigenous Captain Constantine with a single scope, I was more confident that Major Armand could completely dispose of the indigenous Indian tribe. Although the French Empire was defeated by the British in Europe, the soldiers of the French Empire on the New World are definitely not the ones that backward and ignorant natives can resist. Captain Constantine thought that Major Armand should lead his team to return at noon tomorrow or tomorrow afternoon. The fleet only needs to wait here overnight, and the next day will be able to make a fortune. So, after having a good meal with the 4 captains and a few loyal men in the evening, Captain Constantine arranged the soldiers on duty and fell asleep peacefully. As for whether you can dream of the bags of gold and gems in your dreams, then it is not known to outsiders. P.S. Bo to thank Tang Docile 100 for the reward. Chapter 141, Night Attack. Being on duty in this cold and dark night is a very guilty thing, even if everyone is only on duty for 2 hours. This kind of work still makes the soldiers on duty scold their mothers and their hearts. Especially the hapless ones who were arranged to be on duty in the early hours of the morning. They even wanted to pull up the guys sleeping in the cabin to replace themselves. During this period of time before the sun rises, it is not only the coldest and darkest time of the day, but also the most sleepy time. In addition, these soldiers on duty never thought that someone would attack them, so they all wrapped up in thick cotton clothes and slumped in the corner to doze. In fact, this group of soldiers has long been complaining about guarding this kind of work at night. Usually when the transport ship sails on the Mississippi River, it will dock and anchor at night. For so many years, I have never heard of that ship being attacked by those natives. This kind of armed transport ship is not a small sampan or a canoe used by the indigenous people. Is it true that the artillery placed on the decks on both sides of the ship's side are paper sticky? It's a joke. If the indigenous tribes who don't have long eyes dare to attack, then they will definitely taste the shells ejected by the 84mm Valerian gun. Therefore, there is no need to be on duty at night, especially on such winter nights. This is the consensus of the low-level soldiers. But no matter how much consensus there is, it's nothing. The commander's order cannot be violated. They can only curse their mother in their hearts. A soldier who had just solved the bladder storage suddenly heard a whistling sound in the distance. He was stunned, and then tried to look in that direction, but he couldn't see anything in the dark. These wild wolves are restless at night. They deserve to starve you to death. The soldier spit fiercely, and left the ship's side with a low mutter, returning to the corner that could block the wind, intending to take advantage of this. Be confused for a while. But not long after the soldier sat down, the voice of Zixiguosuo rang out again, and the voice became louder and louder. This made this soldier very hot. He just wanted to get lost for a while. What is this moth doing outside? What kind of beast is so short-eyed? Dare to make a living here? Don't you want to become the Chinese food for your brothers tomorrow? Although the fire was big, the soldier could no longer sit still. The military order was like a mountain. Since there was such a strange noise outside, he had to look at it. The soldier stood up, tightened the cotton clothes tightly wrapped around his body, and put the musket on his back. Then he rubbed his hands and walked out of the corner. The soldier walked to the side of the ship, opened his mouth and yawned and looked forward. As a result, the scene before him made him unable to close his open mouth anymore. I saw a lot of people standing not far from the shore. At first, the soldier thought it was Major Armand bringing the brothers back, but after a few torches were lit, the soldier found out, those people are not brothers of Akron Fortress, but a group of natives with weapons. The soldier rubbed his eyes in disbelief. After confirming that a group of natives were standing in front of him, he was about to yell out loudly. As a result, with a sound of swish, a sharp arrow crossed several times in an instant. At a distance of 10 meters, it accurately penetrated the soldier's open mouth, and the sharp arrow even penetrated directly from the back of the soldier's head. The soldier's voice enemy attack was so tightly sealed by this arrow. The arrow destroyed the soldier's cerebellum and brainstem in an instant. The body of this fairly robust soldier only shook for a moment, and then fell to the ground like a golden mountain and a jade pillar. The sound of the soldier's corpse falling to the ground was very loud on this quiet and cold winter night. Especially the sound of the musket hitting the deck behind him was even louder, and there were a few noises from the other 3 ships. Dazed voice Gabriel, "What's wrong with you?" But before these 3 sounds fell, a loud sound suddenly rang from the land on the shore. Ignition. The next moment, a fire dragon lit up on the shore. Hundreds of torches were lit one after another, and the figures of hundreds of Indian warriors holding bows and arrows were immediately revealed. Torches were inserted in the ground beside these Indian warriors, and all warriors held bows in both hands. With only one command, they could shoot arrows in the shortest time. The 3 French soldiers on duty on the other 3 ships staggered to the side of the ship, and the scene before them made the 3 of them shouted in unison, "The enemy attack!" Shi Xiong hugged his arms and looked at the soldiers on the 3 ships not far in front, but he did not let his soldiers shoot the 3 soldiers to death. The reason why I killed the soldier who wanted to shout just now was mainly because the formation on my side had not been set up, and the tribesmen had not yet fully prepared. But when these 3 soldiers found out, Shi Xiong had led the warriors in the tribe to form a formation and made all the preparations. One of the 3 soldiers panicked and took down the musket on his back. www.wuxiaspa.com. Unfortunately, this Saint Etienne rifle is a front-loaded rifle. If he wants to shoot, he has to take it down. The front end of the barrel puts gunpowder and projectiles into the barrel. But Shi Xiong would not give him this opportunity. Shi Xiong pointed his finger at the French soldier, and the next moment he had at least 10 arrows on his body. Shi Xiong said loudly in French, "Whoever dares to use a musket, kill." Also, all the people in the cabin should come out. You had better not try to use a musket. Once I find someone using a weapon, the one who will welcome you rockets in the sky." As soon as these words were spoken, the remaining 2 French soldiers immediately did not dare to touch the muskets behind them, but honestly raised their hands in a gesture of surrender. Then, there was a series of sounds in the cabin. Obviously, the voice of Shi Xiong had awakened all the French soldiers sleeping in the cabin. "Where is your chief? Please come out and speak," Shi Xiong exclaimed. "As long as you don't use weapons, I can guarantee your safety. Also, don't try to resist. You are completely surrounded by us." Shi Xiong's words were repeated 3 times, and a French officer with the rank of captain came out of the cabin of the middle ship. He was Captain Constantine. As a captain, he naturally doesn't have a gun, but he has a short gun, which is a pistol. Seeing the captain walking out of the cabin, Shi Xiong said loudly, "I don't care who you are, and I don't care what you think. I just tell you, if you dare to make any resistance, you will be at least 20 more arrows. Moreover, there are at least 100 bows and arrows aimed at your fleet. As long as I give an order, these arrows will immediately turn into rockets to completely ignite your fleet." Chapter 142, Countdown to 10. "Who are you? Why are you attacking us?" Constantine asked, holding back the panic in his heart. Seeing the dense crowds below and the rockets that could ignite at any time, he couldn't help but fight in a 2-strand battle. But as the highest commander of this transport fleet, he had to come forward. In any case, he would never have thought that Native Americans would dare to attack them. The situation in front of him made Constantine very embarrassed, really embarrassed. It's not that he didn't want to resist, but the facts before him made him wisely choose dialogue instead of confrontation. The 4 inland river armed transport ships of the fleet are all made of wood. Although the sails on the ships have all fallen down, they are still hung on the masts. Those sails soaked in tung oil are extremely flammable, and a single rocket can ignite a sail. The most important thing is that at this time the 4 ships are all anchored and docked on the shore. If you want to leave the shore, you will have to work for more than 10 minutes at least. This time is enough for the native Indians holding bows and arrows to launch dozens of attacks. If the fleet is in the middle of the river, then Constantine still has the confidence to resist. With the 6 Valyrian cannons on each ship, Constantine is even sure to turn most of these native Indians into corpses. But not now. The 4 wooden boats are now less than 30 meters away from these native Indians. This distance can definitely allow these native Indians to launch attacks calmly. "Who are we? Why are we attacking you? Hee. Your problem is ridiculous." Shi Xiong rode his horse alone and approached the ship, looking up at Constantine and said with a smile. Compared to Shi Xiong's calmness and unrestrainedness, although Constantine stands tall, his face is ugly. But Shi Xiong didn't let him wait any longer. He just turned around and beckoned, and then the 2 fighters escorted Major Armand over. When Major Armand walked from the darkness to the torch, the face of Captain Constantine on the deck immediately became even worse than if he hadn't pulled out Bubba for a month. "Damn it, Major Armand, how did you get captured by them? What about your musketeers? What about the elite Chickasaw fighters you call? How could you be defeated by them?" After the initial shock passed, Constantine became a little hysterical. Although the rank of Major Armand is higher than Constantine, the 2 do not belong to the same system. Major Armand is the army and Captain Constantine is the navy, so Constantine does not need to care about Major Armand. The captive Major Armand made him realize that the fleet is already in an extremely dangerous situation. Maybe it won't take long before he will become a prisoner just like this Major Armand. So Constantine continued angrily to Major Armand, "Didn't you say that this action was a sure thing? Didn't you say that this attack was like a trip? But look at you. You have become captive. It hurts us. Why don't you die on the battlefield? Why are you leading these people here?" Major Armand opened his mouth when asked, but did not say anything. He could only shake his head and sigh. Shi Xiong said loudly to Constantine from the side, "Now there are only 2 ways to go before you. One is a stubborn resistance, and then you will be sent to heaven by my soldiers with rockets to see God. The 2 ways are for you to surrender obediently. I can guarantee your personal safety. At the same time, I can send someone to deliver letters to you, As long as your chief or family members are willing to hand over the ransom or supplies that meet your worth, then you can live. Leave from here. As he said, Shi Xiong made another gesture toward the back. The next moment, more than 30 soldiers moved the heads of the arrows on their bows and arrows close to the burning torches, and then the arrow positions of these arrows burned. The raging fire. These warriors quickly drew their bowstrings, and then more than 30 ignited bows and arrows soared into the air. Under Constantine's horrified gaze, these rockets passed the masts of the fleet high, and finally landed far away, extinguished in the river. See if we have enough strength to ignite your ship before you load the muskets or those of Illyrian cannons. The Major Armand also said that there is still a lot in your cabin ready to be sent to Ohio. The supplies of the military fortress on the upper reaches of the river may contain gunpowder. So how long do you think your wooden boat can last under such a rocket? And what I want to tell you is that this is the depths of the Appalachian Mountains. It is hundreds of miles away from the Mississippi River that you are familiar with. Thousands of our compatriots. We didn't know when you came, so we let you touch here quietly. But now we have found you, so I advise you not to try to escape, because you can't escape at all. After a pause, Shi Xiong pointed to the embarrassed Major Armand and said, I don't know how your fleet was deceived and dispatched by him www.wuxiaspot.com, but I can tell you a little bit this morning. The 100 musketeers led by the guy and more than 200 Chickasaw fighters have all been wiped out by me. We have not lost a bit of ourselves, and now there are 6 of this guy's men who can still breathe. This is also because these people ran fast on horses. Otherwise even their lives would be lost in that battle. But no matter how fast they ran, they were all captured by us in the end. So, you have to consider what's the next step. Major Armand on the side looked up and said, Constantine, I suggest you surrender, so that you can keep your life. Anyway, I have completely failed. I can only wait for the ransom to come and redeem me. I advise you not to resist. There is no way to resist. You shut up. Damn it, because of you, I have fallen into this situation. Constantine scolded fiercely. Shi Xiong said leisurely, you'd better make a decision. I don't want to wait too much in this cold late night. Anyway, you already know the situation before you. How to decide determines the life and death of you and your men. Okay, I don't want to wait any longer. I will give you 10 counts. Whether to fight or surrender, you choose, said. Shi Xiong stretched out his right hand, and then started a loud countdown with the gesture of his right hand. 10, 9, 8, 7. If we surrender, can you really guarantee the personal safety of me and my men? Shi Xiong nodded proudly, but did not answer, but continued to count down. 6, 5, 4. Constantine bit his cheek, his face changed several times, and finally sighed helplessly. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143, Seized. Looking at the 4 French soldiers on the 4 inland river armed transport ships lifelessly throwing their guns on the ground, and then lined up with their hands tied back by the clansmen, Shi Xiong and Li Lei all smiled on their faces. In order to ensure that no French soldiers were left in the cabin, Stone Bear sent dozens of soldiers to search, and the search continued until the sun rose. Captain Constantine did not lie. He really persuaded all the French soldiers out. The low temperature in the early morning made these surrendered French soldiers very tossed. The clothes on their bodies were not thick. If it weren't for the Shi Xiong's kindness, he lit several bonfires. Maybe just a few of them would be frozen to death in the space of the search. After confirming that all of the French people had come out, Shi Xiong, Li Lei, and a group of high-ranking tribes boarded the 4 ships and began to inspect the 4 ships one by one. Then, they found a lot of good things in the warehouse. Cotton cloth and food are the most, and they don't care about the weird salty Stone Bear. At present, the best table salt in North America and even in Europe is produced in the Gaoshu tribe. Who cares about the low-grade salt that is detoxified and not cleaned? In the cargo hold of a ship, Shi Xiong discovered two 121mm Valor cannons and corresponding ammunition. This 121mm Valerian gun is not comparable to the 84mm Valerian gun erected on the ship's side deck. The 84mm Valerian gun mounted on the ship's side deck has a caliber of only 84mm, which is the smallest caliber naval gun used in the French Navy in this era. Yes, the artillery of this Valerian system belongs to the category of naval guns in a strict sense. It is heavy and has a long range, and is usually placed on sailing warships. Each of these 4 inland river armed transport ships is also equipped with 6 84mm caliber Valor cannons. This type of iron-made artillery is 2.4 meters in length and fires 4 French pounds, or about 4.4 pounds, of projectiles. The overall weight of the gun is about 650 kilograms. This 84mm artillery can not only fire a single projectile, but also a grape projectile, which is the so-called bullet. It's just that when the projectile is launched, the range is far less than that of the projectile. However, when fired, its lethality for infantry at close range was unparalleled. The reason why this type of inland river armed transport ship dared to rampage on the Mississippi River was relying on this type of artillery that could fire bullets. The 121mm caliber artillery found in the cabin of this ship is an upgraded version of the 84mm artillery. This kind of artillery is usually set up in the sailing warship, and the target of this kind of artillery is usually also the enemy's sailing warship. The 121mm Valerian artillery is also made of iron, is 3.1 meters in length, can fire 12 French pound projectiles, and has an overall weight of up to 1,510 kilograms. The Ghost knew what the French thought, and even transported this naval gun to the military fortress in the north through this armed transport ship. Perhaps the military pressure over there is even greater. A certain military fortress needs this kind of naval gun with a range of up to 1,800 meters to deter the enemy. But Shi Xiong knows that although the range of this naval gun is as high as 1,800 meters, the effective range is not very far. The caliber of this type of projectile is nearly a quarter-inch smaller than the caliber of the barrel, and it can be within 200 meters. Hit the target even if it burns high in cents. In fact, almost all artillery in this era are in this situation. The gap between the barrel and the projectile of the artillery of this era is too large, which is easy to be exposed on the side. That is, the clearance is too large. The typical gap can even be inserted into a chopstick, which is about a quarter of an inch. Such a huge gap will inevitably waste the energy of gunpowder gas. When the artillery was fired in this era, the shells were driven by the high temperature and high pressure gunpowder gas, and they smashed into the barrel. It was a bit like a samba dancing and galloping forward. The moment it came out of the muzzle, where would it go? Not necessarily, so the accuracy is not high. Although the heavy cannon can theoretically hit a few kilometers, the actual combat distance of the naval gun is only about 200 meters. Therefore, regardless of the caliber of these two artillery pieces, they are really not so powerful in actual combat. Ishikama, who is used to watching various war movies or documentaries of later generations, naturally would not put this kind of artillery in his eyes. But in the eyes of Li Lei and the others, this kind of artillery is simply the treasure of Senshan. In this era, let alone artillery, even if it is a musket, there are very few in the entire North American Indian tribe. Anyway, as far as Liu Lei knows, in the entire Cherokee tribe, only the royal court and the headquarters of the Red City Alliance have a few muskets. That is still a bunch of desperate guys who pretended to be Pointons and attacked several times in a row. Only those Vasicus got it. In fact, the European colonists of this era are very hard-spirited. If they encounter an unstoppable enemy, they will often destroy the musket before they die after knowing that they are not immune. These Vasicus knew very well that if the indigenous Indians who had a large number of them were given a large number of muskets, their families would not want to gain a foothold in the New World. www.wuxiaspa.com. So, knowing that they would die, these tiles the Western Chus would not leave the muskets to the Indians. Of course, the situation encountered by them like Captain Constantine is different. After all, They can save their lives as long as they surrender. This is the most important thing for them, so they will surrender happily. Even the 4 armed transport ships and the materials on it can't be kept. Who cares about those muskets? Counting the battle at Gaoshu Pass yesterday, the Gaoshu tribe now has almost 100 muskets. Of course, a lot of corresponding ammunition was found in the cargo holds of these 4 ships. These ammunition was originally provided for the military fortresses in the north, but now they are all cheaper for the Gaoshu tribe. If we place these 2 artillery pieces on the north and east sides of the tribe, and then take down the artillery from the 4 ships and put them together with the 2 artillery pieces, and finally our tribe's warriors hold the guns, then our tribe will be considered it's infallible. With this kind of firepower configuration, I am afraid that even the military fortresses of Vasiku can't match it, Lile said with a big-footed brother beside him with a smile. Bigfoot nodded with a smile. The harvest this time was far beyond their expectations. The materials carried on these 4 ships alone were enough to make the Gaoshu tribe make a fortune, let alone the weapons and ammunition seized this time. Among the materials seized this time, in addition to weapons, there are more than 1,500 pounds of black powder, more than 2,000 pounds of purified sulfur and more than 500 pounds of purified sulfur. Obviously, the main raw materials for making black powder were also prepared to be sent to those military fortresses, but they were all given to the Gaoshu tribe for nothing. Compared with the finished gunpowder, Shi Xiong pays more attention to the fire and sulfur. Chapter 144, Strategic Weapon. The black gunpowder seized from these 4 inland river armed transport ships. To be honest, Shi Xiong did not see it. After all, the ratio of these black gunpowder has not reached the perfect state. The standard gunpowder formula used by the United Kingdom was announced as early as 1635, with saltpeter 75%, sulfur 12.5%, and charcoal 12.5%. Although this ratio is close to the perfect formula of black powder, there is still a slight gap. In fact, the most perfect ratio of black powder used in modern times should be 75 ± 1% for saltpeter, 10 ± 1% for sulfur, and 15 ± 1% for carbon. This perfect black powder ratio was not clarified until the end of the 18th century. In other words, even the black powder used by the French at this time was not made with the most perfect black powder ratio. So Shi Xiong intends to use these purified fire nitrates and sulfur to make a perfectly matched black powder by himself. But anyway, the gain this time is great. Seeing that the sky is bright, today is a fine and good weather, so under the arrangement of Shi Xiong, more than 80 tribal warriors were separated. They held weapons and a group of 2 cared for a French soldier. Of course, these 4 ships can't just be placed here. Compared with the materials, these 4 ships are invaluable. With the current capabilities of the Indians, it is impossible to make such a ship, even if this is an inland water transport ship with a displacement of only tens of tons. The Indians cannot make such a ship. The rivers in the central and eastern parts of North America are crisscrossed. With these 4 ships, it will be extremely convenient for the tribe's strategic arrangements in the future. After all, more than 200 warriors of the Ritiki tribe and 100 musketeers of the Okran fortress can ride these 4 ship gods and go deep for hundreds of miles to attack the Gaoshu tribe without any chance. With the roots of the tree that died bravely, coupled with the dangerous terrain of the Gaoshu Pass, maybe the Gaoshu tribe is really doomed this time. Therefore, if the Gaoshu tribe owns these 4 inland river armed transport ships, and then the warriors in the tribe learn how to drive these 4 ships, then the Gaoshu tribe's warriors can also touch Chikashan unconsciously, people's territory, even the place where the king's court was touched into Chikasha. Compared with those artillery and muskets, these 4 inland river armed transport ships are strategic weapons. Lile and the others didn't know the importance of these 4 ships, but Shi Xiong knew, so under Shi Xiong's arrangement, 2 of these tribal warriors served the other. The purpose was to learn how to drive from these French Navy soldiers. This kind of inland river armed transport ship. Although this kind of armed transport ship is an inland water transport ship, It is also a sailing ship. How to control those sails? If no one is taught, even the stone bear does not know how to control this kind of ship. This kind of sailboat that can go against the current and against the wind. The key point is how to control those sails. Under the guard of tribal warriors holding weapons, these French sailors can only honestly control these 4 ships. At this time, no one dared to have other ideas. They all know how ruthless the native Indians with weapons in their hands are. The fleet set sail and headed south along the Tennessee River, which was exactly the course of Constantine when they came. If Constantine knew the terrain or navigation route in this area, it would be absolutely impossible for them to land in this place. In fact, walking a few kilometers south from the place where Constantine and the others anchored, you can see that the Tennessee River has turned a big bend here, and on the south bank of this big bend, there will be a large area similar to a lake. Waters. Viewed from the Tennessee River, this area of water looks like a small lake formed by the turning of the river. There is nothing in it. This kind of lake formed by the turning of the river can be seen everywhere on the road when it came. But in fact, if they were a little bit more curious at the time and drove these 4 inland river armed transport ships into this lake, then they would find another river course at the end of the lake. If they go upstream along this 50-meter wide river, they will eventually reach the west of the Gaoshu tribe. Because this river originated in the Great Smoky Mountains and flows through the Little River from the west of the High Tree tribe. Although this river is not wide, the narrowest place is only a mere 50 meters wide, but the river course of this river is very deep. This kind of inland river armed transport ship with a displacement of only tens of tons walks this river and arrives directly. The west side of the Gaoshu tribe is absolutely fine. Obviously, when Captain Constantine saw this sudden emergence of the river, his face also showed a look of regret. If they were really curious at the time, then they would really be able to land on the west side of the Gaoshu tribe without knowing it, and then the entire Gaoshu tribe might have completely fallen by this time. It's a pity that there is no regret medicine in this world. They can only honestly drive these 4 inland river armed transport ships under the guard of tribal warriors to the south along the channel of the Little River. Reading www.whocananshoe.com. Little River has twists and turns, and it is still countercurrent, but it is winter and the north wind prevails, so although it is countercurrent, the speed of the boat is not slow. The distance of this section of the river is less than 20 kilometers. The 4 boats ran for almost 2 hours before they arrived at the Gaoshu tribe. Seeing that this river is only a few hundred meters away from the target, whether it is Captain Constantine or Major Armand, both of them are now thinking of killing each other. However, this incident also reminds the Stone Bear and Lele that they should not think that the Gaoshu tribe is in the hinterland of the Cherokee tribe. There are rivers to the west and north for protection, and the Great Smoky Mountains to the south as a barrier. But here is still not an absolutely safe place. It's like this time, if the Chickasaw French coalition really knew the Little River Channel, then the current Gaoshu tribe would have no more chickens and dogs. Therefore, in the future, the alert circle of the tribe must be expanded. At the very least, enemies cannot be allowed to touch it along the river. When necessary, a warning point should be set up at the confluence of Little River and Big Bend, which is the Tennessee River. Once an enemy touches it, lighting the wolf smoke can let the tribe know the enemy at least 2 hours in advance. Of course, this kind of thing doesn't need Shi Xiong to worry about. Lele should be able to arrange it soon. Went out for a day and night, and brought back 40 or 50 Vasicus with blonde hair and blue eyes when he returned, which caused a sensation in the tribe again. Even Lieutenant Ferguson appeared on the edge of the river with a fast horse and a hard bone. Seeing the soldiers in a tribe escorting dozens of French soldiers down from the ship, Lieutenant Ferguson's face also bloomed with joy. Chapter 145, Joking Gunpowder. Have you really copied these Frenchmen's dents? Lieutenant Ferguson asked with a smile. Of course he was happy that he had captured so many Frenchmen. Is there anything happier than seeing the enemy captured with your own eyes? It's not honest, just their 4 ships, but there are a lot of good things on these 4 ships. It seems that these 4 ships are going to the military fortresses and fortresses built by the upper reaches of the French to send supplies, and we ended up in one pot. Boss, can you go and see the Frenchman's river transport ship? To be honest, I have never seen the Frenchman's river transport ship. Go, I will show you around. Stone Bear started, and Lieutenant Ferguson and a group of lively clansmen followed on the boat. For these people, let alone ride on such a big boat, they have never seen it before. So a group of people followed the Guardian Lord and got on the boat happily. The people were venting frantically on the deck, while Stone Bear led Lieutenant Ferguson, Koima and Hard Bones into the warehouse where gunpowder, saltpeter, and sulfur were stored. These things are afraid of tide, so they are all stored in big wooden barrels. These large wooden barrels are brushed with tung oil and lined with craft paper, so that they can be as moisture-proof as possible. Lieutenant Ferguson grabbed a handful of granular gunpowder in his palm and looked at it, nodded and said, "Frenchies don't look good on the battlefield, but the gunpowder they get is really good." He is an expert in this area. He can tell at a glance whether the gunpowder is good or not. Patrick, whether you admit it or not, although the French have not been able to fight wars over the years, they are better than your British Empire in invention. Lieutenant Ferguson opened his mouth to refute, but found that he had nothing to say, so he nodded. But he still shifted the topic to the other side. "Boss, are these barrels all gunpowder?" "No, there are some barrels filled with purified fire and sulfur. It looks like the French are going to make gunpowder in their military fortress." Ishikami shrugged non-committal and said, "Now these things are mine, and I plan to use these things to make gunpowder." "Boss, you make gunpowder?" Looking at Lieutenant Ferguson's disbelief look, Shi Xiong smiled and said, "Why, don't you believe that your boss can make gunpowder?" "Haha, it's not that I look down on your British gunpowder, even the gunpowder made in Europe, because the gunpowder you smashed out is not the best gunpowder ratio. This is impossible. The ratio of 75 hours 12 minutes .5:12.5 has long been verified to be the best gunpowder ratio. These years, the whole Europe has been using this ratio to make gunpowder. How could this kind of gunpowder be not the best?" "Matching?" I said no, it is not." Shi Xiong turned his head and smiled at the stubborn Lieutenant Ferguson. Lieutenant Ferguson opened his mouth again, with nothing to say. Shi Xiong patted him on the shoulder and said, "Patrick, don't think that things that have been used for a long time are not wrong. Gunpowder is not a tool. If you use it well, you think that this kind of ratio is the best. This thing is not. It can be judged by experience, but it depends on science for identification." Hearing Shi Xiong say so, whether it was Ferguson or Koima and Bone, everyone surrounded him. After following Stone Bear for so long, they naturally know that once the Guardian speaks this way, they are ready to tell the truth. "Patrick, you are from England, so you should know how gunpowder works." "Well, that is, why does gunpowder explode?" Lieutenant Ferguson scratched his scalp a little embarrassedly and said, "Boss, you also know that I was a soldier when I was 14. I didn't go to school very much. I have these principles." Shi Xiong smiled and nodded. "It's okay. Actually, I have never been to school, but I have a great son to guide me, so I know a lot of things." As for the reason why the boss became a guardian, Lieutenant Ferguson knew a little bit. As a devout Christian believer, he naturally believed that the boss was favored by the highest spirit of the Indians. Otherwise, how could the boss know so much knowledge? If you want to maximize the power of gunpowder, you must first understand the components of gunpowder. We all know that the main component of gunpowder is smelt, but smelt nodes our popular name. The main component of smelt, it's potassium nitrate, which is a very active substance and will easily react with other substances at high temperatures. The explosive process of gunpowder is actually the violent reaction of the various compounds that make up the gunpowder that decompose and recombine into new compounds. The various atoms of these compounds store a large amount of energy in the form of chemical bonds. When the molecules of these compounds decompose, they are formed. Matter, that is, the generated high-temperature and high-pressure gas, will use some of the energy, rather than all of the energy. www.wuxiospa.com to form new chemical bonds. but most of the remaining energy will form high-temperature heat and radiate to the outside, its external manifestation for deflagration or even explosion. Looking at the dumbfounded faces of the little brothers, Shi Xiong immediately realized that these words he was saying seemed to be playing the piano to a cow. With their level of knowledge, they simply did not understand these principles. In fact, let alone them, even the vast majority of Europeans may not understand this. So Shi Xiong coughed a little embarrassingly. Well, these words are a bit advanced for you. Then I will put it in a simpler way. The black powder we are using now is the blast of fire. The oxygen released from potassium nitrate caused the charcoal sulfur to burn violently, and a large amount of heat and nitrogen, carbon dioxide and other gases were instantly generated. Due to the rapid expansion of the volume and the violent increase of the pressure, an explosion occurred. Although they don't know what nitrogen and carbon dioxide are, they still understand it. Patrick, how much gunpowder do you usually use when shooting? Lieutenant Ferguson said bluntly. The amount of gunpowder at one time is about 5 gallons. We all estimated it. 5 gallon is about 8.5 grams. Shi Xiong nodded and said, this gunpowder is a little bit larger, but it doesn't matter. After all, the black powder you use is not the best ratio, and the one you are using now guns have too much clearance, and the utilization rate of the high temperature and high pressure gas generated when the gunpowder deflagrates is too low. After a pause, Shi Xiong continued, if the black powder is to be made according to the best ratio, and if the clearance of the gun is not that large, then only 2 drams of gunpowder needs to be loaded in a single shot. The projectile flies farther and has more power. Chapter 146, Castor Oil and Private Agent. Dylan is an imperial unit of weight. A dash of blue is approximately equivalent to 1.77 grams of the metric unit of weight. Ishikama said that 24 rand is a little more, which is about 4 grams. Lieutenant Ferguson said in disbelief. Boss, we have tried to charge less, but the effect is not good. The range of the projectiles shot out is much lower, and the penetration power is also much worse, especially because of the lack of power of the projectiles. It will also lead to a significant drop in accuracy. Shi Xiong nodded and said, what you said is bound to exist, which is why I asked you to develop a new rifle. The new rifle I asked you to develop is not only for the reloading speed, but more importantly, to try my best. The clearance between the projectile and the barrel is reduced, and the utilization rate of the gunpowder is further increased. In this way, the range, power and accuracy of the projectile can be guaranteed. What you can't think of is that if the gap between the projectile and the barrel is small enough, using a little more than 2 gallons of gunpowder will have a much better effect than using 5 gallons. Lieutenant Ferguson continued to look at his boss. Obviously, if Shi Xiong didn't explain the reason to him, this stubborn guy would keep asking. Shi Xiong naturally understood Ferguson's gaze. He smiled and held up a handful of black powder and continued to explain, this handful of powder is about 24 rand, which is about 4 grams in weight. This ignition powder is made with the best proportion of black powder, so just such a small amount of powder can produce up to 280 liters of gas after being ignited. Do you know what 280 liters of gas is? Probably. It is 10,000 times that of this small amount of gunpowder. Ah, Ferguson, Koima and Hardbones cried out in surprise. Yes, it's just such a little ignition powder. Just click it, and the volume will expand 10,000 times in an instant. The most important thing is that the expansion speed of this gas far exceeds the speed of sound. If we can take all these gases utilization, then think about it. How powerful is the projectile shot out of the barrel? How far will the range be? Lieutenant Ferguson swallowed dryly. Boss, I listen to you. Hee. Of course you have to listen to me. Patrick, can you make gunpowder? Yes. When I was in the army, I often made gunpowder by myself. Well, then you remember the standard ratio of gunpowder. Saltpeter is 75 plus minus 1%, sulfur is 10 plus minus 1%, and carbon is 15 plus minus 1%. Don't say this data. Don't worry, boss, even if I return to Jamestown, this data is only known to me, and I will only use this ratio to make gunpowder for myself. Well, remember what you said. Then, the fire and sulfur will be handed over to you to make gunpowder. Well, what kind of charcoal is needed? You can tell the fast horse or the hard bones. Now they will prepare it for you. Charcoal is easy to say, the key is the secret agent. Boss, I can't make granular gunpowder without the secret agent. Shi Xiong nodded and said, this is okay. I'm responsible for getting the private agent out for you, but I can't get out the insensitive agent, mainly because I don't have those equipment here. But is there any insensitive agent in black powder? It doesn't matter anymore. It seems that the gunpowder you are using now has no desensitizer added, right? Insensitive agent? Ferguson looked blank. What is that? Shi Xiong shook his head helplessly. He accidentally engaged in a big oolong. The violent drugs of later generations all need to be added with desensitizing agents, but now there is only one kind of gunpowder in the world, and that is black gunpowder. The gadgets are not as sensitive as those violent drugs, and naturally there is no need to add desensitizing agents. Okay, just pretend I didn't say it. The private agent is a little troublesome, but I promise it's okay. The so-called private agent is the main medium for making black powder into granules. The earliest gunpowder smuggling agent was egg white. But using egg white as a private agent is obviously too extravagant, although there are many chemical products used as a private agent in later generations. In this era, the best private agent is castor oil. In the museum where the stone bear of the previous life is located, there are many records of our army beating Little Devil back then. At that time, our army was very difficult and the conditions were poor, but even under those conditions, our army successfully produced a violent drug. Of course, in that era, the black gunpowder made by our army was made of castor oil. The castor plant is originally produced in Africa, but with the advent of the great nautical era, there have been such plants in the Pimple of America for a long time, but there are not many of them. But it doesn't matter. There is castor in Europe. The big deal is that next time he trades with Major Hank, let him get some castor to squeeze the oil by himself. Anyway, there is no rush to do gunpowder. After all, the black gunpowder seized from the French this time also weighed thousands of pounds. Even if the seized guns were scrapped, the gunpowder could not be used up. And once the new rifle is developed, the black powder that was captured is enough to be used for military training temporarily. After coming out of the cargo warehouse of this ship, Shi Xiong took them to the cargo warehouses of the other 3 ships, but the cargo holds mostly contained food, cloth, salt and other daily necessities. Ferguson is not interested in these things, but Koima and the hard bones are happy. They seized so much food and cloth all at once, and they were as excited as other people. Ferguson is very interested in the Valyrian guns erected on the deck. www.wuxiaspot.com. I have to admit that the British are really inferior to the French in terms of making artillery. At present, in the whole of Europe, the highest artillery manufacturing technology is the French. Despite the fact that Spain is the most powerful, the British defeated the French in the just concluded 7 Years' War, but the French's military technology is among the best in Europe. The Spanish and the British, including the Germans and the Dutch, are here not as good as the French. It's a pity that these are good artillery. These artillery is totally blind in the hands of the Frenchmen. Lieutenant Ferguson stroked an 84mm Valier cannon and exclaimed with emotion, "These artillery will be able to guard our tribe in the future. Our leader said that we must erect these artillery around the tribe. If those Chicashes dare to attack us, we will bombard him with artillery," Bones said excitedly beside Ferguson. Lieutenant Ferguson nodded with a smile. "The power of these artillery is pretty good, and it is naturally excellent for guarding the tribe. P.S. I will report a bad news to everyone. Well, that is, Lao Mo is going out today to participate in a very important tender, which lasts about 4 or 5 days. To be honest, Lao Mo has saved manuscripts, but not many, because summer is the company's peak production season, and the health of the old lady at home is not very good, so there is less time for Lao Mo codewords during this period of time. Naturally, there are not many drafts. It happened that this time the bidding was a lot of work, so Lao Mo estimated that there was almost no time for the code word after going out, and he could only use the saved draft. Therefore, in these 4 or 5 days, Lao Mo could only change once a day. Please forgive me a lot on this point. However, after the bidding comes back, Lao Mo will have plenty of time, and then Lao Mo will try to make more codes. Thank you. Chapter 147, Man vs. Wild. Lieutenant Ferguson took fast horses, hard bones and rabbit mouths to make gunpowder. Of course, he did it according to the formula provided by Shi Xiong. Although there is no castor oil in the tribe as a private agent, the private agent itself is not used much. In addition, there are some peanut oil in the tribe. Let the gunpowder become particles, so Lieutenant Ferguson plans to make a new type of gunpowder to try the power of this gunpowder. Most of the people in the tribe are still making salt, because the weather was too cold. The women who opened up wasteland and farmed land are not opening up wasteland anymore. Instead, they went to Zioyanshan and followed a piece of salt to make salt. After this group of women comparable to adult male warriors joined the salt-making army, the production of refined salt in the tribe immediately increased by a big margin. When Major Hank comes next time, his face will be blooming. Some of the warriors in the tribe still go out every day to catch the bison. Ever since they witnessed the power of the fireball array at Gaoshu Pass, Li Lei, Bigfoot and even Hong Yun have paid special attention to the domestication of bison. They understood at this time why the Guardian had spent so much effort to catch and tame the bison. This kind of large livestock is really good. You only need to feed them weeds every day, but these tamed cattle can not only greatly improve the efficiency of farming, but also can be used as a surprise soldier at critical moments. Had it not been for the fireball formation last time, I am afraid that the Gaoshu tribe no longer exists. This can be clearly known from the group of soldiers in the tribe who are now training to use muskets. The warriors in the tribe are still taking turns to catch the bison. Except for a few of the remaining warriors who have to go around the tribe to choose suitable locations to set up guard posts, the other warriors are all practicing how to use the musket under the instruction of Lieutenant Ferguson. The 100 or so muskets seized from the French can't be wasted, and Shi Xiong knows very well that if the Gaoshu tribe is to grow and even dominate the continent in the future, then the warriors in the tribe must use heat weapons. Practice from now on. No matter how powerful a cold weapon is, it cannot be better than a hot weapon. This has been proven by history. The people in the tribe each have their own work. Each of them is too busy to deal with each other. On the contrary, the guardian of the stone bear has become idle again. The foot of the Great Smoky Mountain in winter is indeed a bit idle. The weather is too cold, except for some hungry wolves. Almost all other animals are in Madong. It is hard to find if you want to go out and hunt. The goal. I want to squeeze some more oil, but after searching the warehouse, Shi Xiong did not find any extra soybeans or peanuts. The soybeans and peanuts left in the warehouse are reserved for planting next year, and they must not be moved. As for wheat, the seeds are also reserved. Shi Xiong plans to use some wheat to make some flour to make steamed buns and noodles. I want to make wine, but how can I make wine before the second twist? But what makes Shi Xiong feel at ease is that the fermentation of the koji is very good, which can be regarded as a touch of comfort to his lonely heart. Wandering around, Master Guardian plans to make some steel again, but this kind of work like steel making has never been done by one person. Using a crucible to make steel has an ass. It took a lot of effort and couldn't make many things. In the end, Shi Xiong reluctantly gave up the idea of reopening the furnace to make steel. There is no shortage of steel in the tribe now. There is no shortage of steel for the time being, so the tribe has no enthusiasm for steel making at the beginning. The most important thing is that salt can get a lot of good things from Waxiku, so the people's enthusiasm for salt is far greater than other things. It was only at this time that Shi Xiong realized that the shortage of manpower was so embarrassing. Even if our guardian has a lot of ideas in his mind, there are so many people in the Na tribe. Before the steam engine was invented, almost all the work required a lot of manpower to do. No one, everything can only be fantasy. There are many small tribes around Gaoshu tribe, just like the Shaggy Cattle tribe and the exterminated Pumpkin Bay tribe. Such small tribes have a radius of more than 100 around Gaoshu tribe. There are more than 10 in the range. If all these tribes are called back, then the number of Gaoshu tribes will immediately break through the 1,500 person mark. This number is enough to make the Gaoshu tribe rank among a medium to large tribe. If you are more greedy and conquer the more distant tribe, then the High Tree tribe will not be a problem even if it becomes a large tribe or even a super large tribe. But it still doesn't work now. At least it will be after the harvest next year before we can determine the next step to conquer the surrounding tribes based on the grain output. Food is the most critical basis for the rise of the tribe. You brought people in, but there was no food for them to eat. Who would follow you? It's good if people don't instigate you. Therefore, next year's food production is the fundamental factor that determines whether the tribe can grow. It's just that, even if it's now in the moon of the wolf, January, there is still half a year before the month of strawberry, June, when the wheat is harvested. Can't make steel. www.wuxiaspa.com. Can't make wine. After 2 days of training with a group of fighters, he immediately lost his interest. This made Shi Xiong really do nothing. Seeing that even big people like Li Lei and Hong Yun were busy with the clansmen, Shi Xiong suddenly felt that he was a superfluous person. Go to her sister and sister. Lao Tzu is no longer wandering around in the tribe. Lao Tzu has to find something for himself. Otherwise I can't survive this winter. So Shi Xiong decided to come to a realistic version of survival in the wilderness. Well, to be precise, he planned to go hunting in the wilderness to the west and take a vacation. No way. Stone Bear also wants to go to Miami Beach in Florida or the Caribbean islands further south for vacation in this cold season, but he can't go, really can't go. At this time, Miami was still a fortress, and it was the territory of Spain and Seminoles. Fortunately for the Spaniards, but the Seminoles are not. They are a branch of the Cree. With the hatred of the Cherokee and Cree, Shi Xiong estimated that if he went there at this time, he might have the Seminoles were killed. As for going to the Caribbean islands, well, that's a good choice. Shi Xiong believes that with the strength of his current physique, he can definitely become a pirate leader there. Who dares to refuse? Just do it. But Shi Xiong is really reluctant to leave here. So, planning to come and go, Shi Xiong decided to go to the west alone. Of course, what he said to the tribes was go to the Chikashi territory to the west to examine the enemy's situation. This reason really moved the people's hearts again. Chapter 148, Strong Bow. Ishikama grabbed the arrow's tail and pulled it hard, and the arrow made of all-body stainless steel was pulled out, and a puff of bright blood spurted out as the arrow was pulled out. The stone bear who had prepared for a long time only took a step outward, avoiding the blood spurting from the neck of this poor North American ibex. This is the third day when Stone Bear entered the wilderness. He saw a group of wild goats on a dead tree about 10 meters high, so he shot one without hesitation. 2 days ago, Stone Bear single-handedly crossed the little river and entered the wilderness to the west of the Gaoshu tribe. He rode a war horse, which was formerly the mount of Major Armand, but after Armand was captured, this majestic war horse became the mount of the Stone Bear. Now Major Armand and Captain Constantine are leading a group of captured French soldiers digging down the Salt Mountain. This group of captives will not be raised for nothing in the tribe, so the necessary labor reform is still necessary. It's just that it's cold now and it's impossible to continue to open up wasteland, so these prisoners were sent to Zioyan Mountain, where salt was excavated on the other side of Zioyan Mountain. In the process of salt making, the heaviest physical activity is to dig rock salt down from the mountain. In the past, this kind of work was done by strong people. Now there are more than 50 free French laborers. This kind of work is natural, it's up to them to do it. Of course, around these prisoners are more than 30 tribal warriors holding bows and arrows and carrying ammunition and muskets. These French people are responsible for digging rock salt, and the tribesmen make salt on the other side of the Salt Mountain. There is this small salt mountain in the middle, so there is no need to worry that these French people learn how to make salt. These French people are also honest, relying on their own labor in exchange for rations every day. Poor Major Armand was also on the list of labor reform, and his horses were naturally enjoyed by the stone bears. When Shi Xiong set out, he was carrying a large and exaggerated bow on his back. This bow was specially built for the guardian, and it was even larger than the longbow used by English longbowmen. The most important thing is that the body of this bow is made of steel plate, and 4 tendons twisted together serve as bowstrings. There is no way. The pulling force of this bow is too great. 1 or 2 tendons cannot withstand the pulling force of opening this bow. In the end, 4 tendons are twisted together to achieve the pulling force requirement to fully open this bow. The strength of the stone bear is too great. He dare not open the bow made of wood in the tribe, because once he opens the bow, if he has a little more strength, the bow will be pulled directly. In desperation, Shi Xiong built such a steel bow for himself. For this reason, when Ferguson and the others made a small-scale steel-making to build a barrel, Shi Xiong also opened a small stove for himself, made a pot of molten steel with a cauldron, and finally built such a strong bow. But this bow is made, and the arrows are hard to find. The wood-made arrows used by the tribal warriors cannot be used on this bow at all. Without him, the arrows are too light, and the bow strength of this bow is too great. Don't say the bow is opened to the maximum. Even if it is opened to 2/3, the arrow shot will lose its accuracy because the bow is too strong. Bows and arrows must be matched. Small bows can't shoot big arrows. Similarly, large bows can't shoot small arrows. Only when the bow and arrow fit together perfectly, the arrow shot will be the most powerful and accurate. So Shi Xiong created another 20 special arrows for himself. These 20 arrows are all made of stainless steel. The little finger is thick and thin, and the length is close to 1.5 meters. Such an arrow weighs about 5 kilograms. The arrow of the arrow is a triangular pyramid with a length of 6 centimeters. If this thing is shot on a person, it can directly penetrate a person. This powerful bow is equipped with such an all-steel arrow. Ishikama has tested it, and the farthest range can reach more than 400 meters. This distance is much longer than the range of the god-arm crossbow of the Chinese Song dynasty. At a distance of 200 meters, the arrow shot can penetrate a 3-centimeter thick wooden board. The people who saw this bow were amazed at the power and range of this powerful bow, but they were only envious, because they didn't have the strength to start work, let alone pull this bow full. If you want to pull this bow to the full, the fault is that Shi Xiong, a talented and infinitely powerful guy, can do it. According to Shi Xiong's estimation, to fully open this bow, his arms really need a lot of strength. In the ancient times of China, this is at least a 7-stone bow or even a strong bow of the 9-stone bow. This bow is the biggest support for the stone bear to enter the wilderness. In addition to this bow, Shi Xiong also took possession of the handguns of Major Armand and Captain Constantine. Although the handguns of this era are far from comparable to the revolvers 100 years later, they are still very powerful at close range. The strong bow is a long-range attack, the steel spear is a medium and close-range attack, and the handgun and throwing axe are used for close-range defense. With these 4 weapons, www.wuxiaspad.com plus the power of the horse and the stone bear under the crotch, this wilderness is a great place to go. Even if you encounter a large number of enemies, you can still run if you can't beat them. With weapons and tents and other things, the stone bear crossed the little river to the west, and then began to head west along these folds of mountains between the Cumberland Plateau in the north and the Great Smoky Mountains in the south. It is rare to see herbivores in groups in the wilderness in winter. Even the common bison is rare in this freezing winter. For 2 days, Shi Xiong didn't catch any good prey. If he hadn't stayed with some tortillas when he went out, he would be hungry now. As a result, early in the morning of the 3rd day, Shi Xiong found such a strange scene by a small river. More than a dozen wild goats with long hairs climbed onto a dead tree. Stone Bear knows that North American wild goats have excellent climbing ability, but they can climb mountains very well, and they can even climb cliffs of more than 70 degrees. Stone bears have never seen wild goats that can climb trees. P.S. Ibex can climb trees. This is not the old-fashioned nonsense. You can save the ibex, and you will find that the magical animal, the ibex, can really climb trees. Ghost knows. Why do these wild goats climb trees to play? 200 meters away, Shi Xiong drew the strong bow. At this distance, Shi Xiong had confidence to hit a target as big as a wild goat. Under the huge thrust of the strong bow, the dark arrow made a slightly curved bend in the air, and in the next moment it accurately plunged into the neck of a wild goat. The wild goats on the tree were so scared that they scattered. Shi Xiong rode his horse to the tree and saw the wild goat that he had shot with an arrow. Chapter 149, Huazisi. The sharp skinning knife moved dexterously in Shi Xiong's big hand, and a sheepskin was quickly peeled off. Benefiting from the proficient hunting and prey handling skills that the body has trained in this life, the stone bear does not have to worry about being hungry in the wild. But whether in the past or in this life, the stone bear is an out-and-out carnivore. I can't say that a meal without meat is not happy, but if you enter the wilderness for 2 days without eating meat, this is really bad for the stone bear. If you are in the tribe, the viscera will naturally be left by the stone bear. After all, the haggis is also an extremely delicious delicacy. But here, there is no condition for making haggis, so Shi Xiong can only give up those haggis reluctantly. The raging bonfire quickly burned. After the wood burned red and the flame went down, the leg of lamb pierced on the iron spear was framed by the stone bear on the 2 tree branches beside the bonfire. Speaking of the starting point of the bonfire, I have to mention another preparatory work that Shi Xiong did before setting off, and that was the making of fire folds. The fires in the tribe are kept in the fire pond and can be ignited at any time, but if you go out into the wilderness, there is no fire pond to ignite the fire. Only flint and dried reed fleece collected in autumn are used to ignite the fire. Shi Xiong was very uncomfortable with this kind of ignition method, so while he was making the strong bow, he stole the firefold used by the Chinese ancestors. Speaking of such things as huazizi, it can be called one of the ancient black technologies in China. This thing is comparable to a modern lighter in ancient China. It looks very inconspicuous as a bamboo tube. As long as you open the cover, and then blow a breath in, the raging flames will immediately appear. When not in use, as long as the cover is closed, the flame will be extinguished immediately. But even though the flame of huozuozi is extinguished, the combustible material in the bamboo tube is still smoldering. If you need to start the fire next time, open the lid and breathe, and the flame will come out immediately. Moreover, this kind of huaz, which is comparable to modern lighters, was invented as early as 577 AD during the southern and northern dynasties, and it is said that it was invented by a court lady. At that time, the army needed to go out to fight frequently, and getting fire was a big problem. If it could not catch fire, then the whole army would have to eat raw food and lettuce. At this time, the court lady invented this kind of fire book, allows the entire army to eat hot meals and dishes. After that, it was much easier for the ancient Chinese army and the common people to ignite the fire. However, with the advent of foreign fire and lighters, huazizi, something that has been circulated in China for thousands of years, gradually disappeared. After all, fire folds are not as easy to carry as lighters or matches, and fire folds, especially high-end fire folds used by large families, are expensive to make. The fire folds used by ordinary people in ancient China were mostly rough earthen paper rolled into a compact paper roll and stuffed into a small bamboo tube. Just light it up, blow it out, cover it, and keep it a little gap, leaving a little spark in the bamboo tube. Then when needed, just blow it lightly to burn again. This kind of firefold is simple to make and the cost is not high, but the fire in the firefold is limited for a limited time. There is also a high-end fire zizi, which is specially used by large families and wealthy people. The fire in this kind of firefold can be stored for a long time, but because of the material used, the cost of making this kind of firefold is very high, and ordinary people simply can't afford it. To make this high-end firefold, you must first soak the sweet potato vine in water. Soak the sweet potato vine until it becomes soft, and then take it out and use a hammer to flatten it. Then add cotton and reed velvet to continue soaking and pounding. After they are beaten, they are put out to dry. Fortunately, although the weather was cold in those 2 days, the sun was good, so it dried out easily. After drying, these things are added with flammable spices such as fire nitrate, rosin, sulfur, etc., and finally twisted into a rope and stuffed into a bamboo tube. Click and then close the lid. Open the lid when you use it. There is no need to blow at all. The flame will come out just by shaking it. This kind of high-end fire folds lasts much longer than those low-grade fire folds, and it only needs to be shaken to start a fire. After all, the sulfur, fire nitrate, rosin and other things added to this high-end fire folder are extremely flammable, and as long as they have a little oxygen, they can burn immediately. Huazi is a thing I have seen a lot, not to mention, in his museum there is a collection of huazi used by several wealthy families in the Song dynasty. One of the huazi was used by a prince. As a cultural protection expert, Shi Xiong naturally knows how to make and use the fire folds, so he made some fire folds before going out. Since we have to do it, then we must do that kind of high-end fire fold. The tribe itself has reed fleece collected in autumn, and rosin collected from the trunks of longleaf pine trees in the mountains. The best rosin is from longleaf pine, and there are a large number of longleaf pines growing in the southeastern part of the New World. You don't know how many longleaf pines grow in the Great Smoky Mountains alone. The use of rosin in the tribe is quite large, so there is a lot of rosin in the tribe. www.wuxiasput.com. As for the fire and sulfur, a large number of fire and sulfur were seized from the French this time, and it is enough to make gunpowder, let alone making fire folds. As for the sweet potato vines, there are so many things in the field, and they are all dried long ago. Just picking up some of them is enough. The only thing missing is cotton. But Ishiguma can't help it. Lieutenant Ferguson has a cotton coat, so Ishiguma directly replaced Lieutenant Ferguson's ripped jacket with a fur coat. After disassembling, the cotton inside is enough. As for the bamboo tubes used for the fire folds, there are also a lot of bamboos on the Great Smoky Mountains, which are enough. Speaking of bamboo, there was no bamboo in the area of the Great Smoky Mountains, but after the Cherokee moved south and contacted the Pueblo people, they introduced some bamboo from the Pueblo people, so it was foggy. Bamboos also exist on the mountainside. However, in order to prevent the bamboo tube from being damaged by the smoldering fire, Shi Xiong rolled the thin iron sheet into a bucket and lined the bamboo tube, and then stuffed the made fire rope inside, and a fire fold was completed. After this thing was made, the entire tribe was shocked, and even Lieutenant Ferguson was shocked by this kind of fire that could spontaneously ignite with a single wave of his hand. We must know that at this time, although the German brand had extracted white phosphorus from urine, and made the most primitive white phosphorus matches with white phosphorus dipped in sulfur, this kind of matches did not spread, because white phosphorus matches are too dangerous. They can ignite spontaneously when the temperature is slightly higher, which burns many people. As for the real safety matches, it will take almost 100 years to be developed by the Swedish Lundström. So in this era of Europe, this kind of thing that can ignite on its own is definitely a rare thing. Chapter 150, Sing to Death. Compared with steel making, curved plows, columbine carts, salt making, and taming bison, fire's easy may not seem so tall, but in the New World of North America in this era, this thing is really true, black technology. After all, the first few have already existed in Europe, but huozizi is really invisible. Although at this time there were the most primitive Thurin igniters and so-called fuse igniters using tinder and sulfur matches in Europe, but those things are in no way comparable to fire folds. The emergence of huozizi has made the tribesmen in the tribe regard the guardian as the spokesperson of the gods in the world. After all, fire has a very high status in the New World of North America in this era. Although fire is very common, this kind of free and convenient method of making fire, in the minds of these Indians, is that only gods can. What can be done? Anyway, Shi Xiong didn't expect that he had accidentally knocked out huozizi by an unintentional act, but he had greatly increased his prestige in the tribe. It is no exaggeration to say that the prestige of the guardian in the tribe even exceeds that of the high priest Kabru. The high priest Kabru could not produce a miracle like huozizi, but the guardian could easily show this miracle in front of the world, And he also taught this miracle to the world. Clan people, this is clearly that the great gods are using the guardian to enlighten themselves. What do the people in the tribe think? Shi Xiong can't control it. After making a fire break, he took the freshly baked strong bow and steel arrows and rode the tall horse to the wilderness, swaying in the wilderness. It took 2 days to hunt down a wild goat this morning. The sharpness of the skinning knife is self-evident, so the meat on the hind leg of the lamb was easily cut off piece by piece with the knife, and then dipped in the salt made by the tribe into the stone bear's mouth. I have to say that the taste of this purely natural and wild goat is really authentic. At least the taste is much better than the so-called pure green Zemeng lambs that I have eaten in Zemeng in the previous life. Especially this way of directly roasting and dipping in salt and eating, it can fully reflect the fragrance of wild goat meat. When Shi Xiong traveled to the prairie in the previous life, he had eaten the famous hand-caught lamb, but Shi Xiong felt that this roasted lamb was dipped in salt to eat, and the taste was more authentic than that of cooked lamb dipped in salt. Of course, this may also have a lot to do with Shi Xiong not eating meat for 2 days. As a meatless foodie, I haven't tasted the meat for 2 days. Now I eat this extremely fresh wild goat at first. The taste is naturally better than anything else. The lamb hind legs are not cooked at one time, so you can only cut the meat down while roasting. After a layer of meat is roasted, a layer of meat is cut. In the end, a leg of lamb weighing more than 10 kgs becomes a bone, and all the meat on the bone enters Shi Xiong's stomach. The meal that I ate was a heart-wrenching one, and the stone bear who ate could not help his mouth full of oil, and he hummed comfortably. Today's weather is very good. There is no cold north wind, the sun is high in the sky, making people just want to squint for a while. If there is any regret, then there is no wine. If there is a bottle of wine, even if it is erguo, just eat this leg of lamb. That's a cool one. Shi Xiong lit a burning tree branch. He took the pipe in his hand and thought happily as he swallowed the clouds. In fact, if you live this little day every day, it would be pretty beautiful. When you brew the wine, squeeze more oil next year, and then make the cigarettes, plus the ability to eat meat every day. This little life is not worse than the previous life. There is no one around here. Far to the south is the blue-gray Smoky Mountain, and not far in front is the Hayworthy River, surrounded by a series of fold mountains like Bison Ridge. The sky is azure blue, and although there is still snow in some places on the ground and mountains, this emptiness and desolation has a unique beauty. Knocked off the residue left by the burning tobacco in the pipe, Stone Bear stood up, and began to sing loudly, "I love you, my home, my home, my heaven. Also, this is the Qinghai Tibet Plateau. Raise your head and run wildly on the blade-filled earth, with a brave heart that will never cry. Not for anything else, just for the legendary and beautiful grassland." The hoarse, broken gong voice has to sing this kind of high-key song. If there are people around at this time, it is probably definitely running away with his head. Others want money to sing. This guy sings terribly. There were several stern wolf howls in the wilderness in the distance. It is estimated that a certain lone wolf was attracted by this sound of nature. A sound of horse hooves interrupted Shi Xiong's self-entertaining singing, which made Shi Xiong very uncomfortable. If you continue to sing like this, maybe the lone wolf can attract him. The location of the stone bear is in a small col. The series of side-by-side fold mountains between the Cumberland Plateau and the Great Smoky Mountains are cut off by the Hayworth River in this area. The Clear River water traverses these fold mountains and merges into the Tennessee River not far from the north. The small mountain where the stone bear is located is not far east of the Hayworth River, and the sound of the river can even be heard here. However, because of the obstruction of the mountain col, Shi Xiong did not find anyone coming on horseback, until this person approached here. Shi Xiong heard the sound of horseshoes. The sound of horse hooves made Shi Xiong's self-entertainment singing cease abruptly. Although Shi Xiong was very upset, he still took out the mountain knife that was attached to his waistband very vigilantly, and put the pipe back into the bag at the same time. Take it out. If it is an enemy, people are already close to this distance, and then using a strong bow is naturally no good, but with handguns and mountain knives, Shi Xiong is confident that there are 10 or 8 enemies. and he can definitely kill them easily. So, when Baiyun rode a horse and turned around the blocking call, she saw a big, sturdy, scary guy, holding a sharp knife in one hand and a strange thing in the other, staring at it. Seeing myself. This sudden big man shuddered Baiyun with fright and almost fell off his horse. She never expected that the series of strange songs that made people annoying to hear just now was actually sung by such a big guy. Managed to control the reins, and the steed under his hips stopped obediently. Baiyun took the opportunity to stabilize his body and looked at the guy who frightened him again. So the eyes of the two people met again. P.S. This afternoon's flight home. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.